Chapter 73. Genius 1 second. Remember, if you want to go? Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Sweat. I came back later than I expected. Everyone please forgive me. Since they were all sitting together, He Yuan no longer conversed with Luonan alone. She began the meeting. He Yuan had already established her position in the society through her accomplishment of single-handedly repelling the human-faced arachnid's clone in the elevator. She had analyzed the previous problems. Of course, she had a faint military background. No one expressed any dissatisfaction with her presiding over the meeting, at least on the surface. As for Luonan, he was still in the stage where he was being observed. Gazes fell on his face, and all of them were straightforward playfulness and curiosity. There was no concealment whatsoever. Luonan was also observing them. If the operation continued, his safety would be greatly affected by these people. Of course, he couldn't be careless. He didn't remember it during the initial introduction, so he could only study it hard during the meeting. Luonan really admired his secretary when it came to this. It was only during their introductions that he learned that He Yuan had also just retired from the military. She had joined the Wilderness Explorers Association less than a day ago and was a newcomer, just like him. But with the same experience, He Yuan could clearly remember the names and nicknames of all the participants. There was no hindrance in communicating during the meeting, and she also had a clear understanding of everyone's duty and movement within the hotel. This was not just a matter of memory but also a matter of whether one was diligent or not. Speaking of meetings, the initial format was quite casual. He Yuan didn't walk down one topic after another. Instead, she followed the same pattern of communication she had with Luonan. She chatted and gathered information from all sides. Luonan didn't exit Project 001, so he could clearly see that the template's contents were being updated and adjusted at lightning speed. The blueprints of the Limestone Water Village pub also became more and more detailed. It could be seen that He Yuan was attempting to reverse engineer the movements of the human-faced arachnid. She wanted to see how it would make its move against the Black Wolf. However, she was unable to see the results at the moment. Luonan felt quite familiar with this sort of intuitive deduction method. Lovego, small sate, Neku. He opened his notebook subconsciously. The flexible e-ink screen was still on the drawing interface. To him, the abstract and precise structure of the wraith sign was particularly eye-catching among the messy lines. The drawing interface stopped at the moment when he sensed the existence of the human-faced arachnid and worn Shuele. Luonan was a bit spellbound as he looked at the chaotic lines on the interface. What he could confirm was that he had not truly seen the human-faced arachnid in the instant he had drawn the wraith sign. What had stimulated him was an intense yet fuzzy feeling. It was similar to an incomparably mysterious intuition. Luonan was no stranger to this feeling. When he added his drawings, the self-portrait of the prison building, the sketch of the capture of Li Shueqing, they were all pieced together by the details of this intuitive inspiration. If he used Zhang Yingying's description of a shaman as a standard, this was the only ability he could rely on. Bang! Someone in the conference room slammed the table. Luonan was also alarmed. He originally thought that it was someone who was dissatisfied with He Yuan, but when he raised his head, he discovered that it was actually a group of ability users. They had inexplicably sunk into an argument. It seemed that some problems were triggered as the content of the conversation gradually deepened. In a peaceful state, everyone was smiling and no difference could be seen. But at this time, almost everyone in the conference room had emotions, but they showed different faces. Some were anxious, some were angry, some were absent-minded, some were disappointed, and some were watching coldly from the sidelines. Luonan felt that this was quite interesting. He took out his digital pen, and the tip of the pen fell down, sketching on the flexible e-ink screen. The originally chaotic lines underwent a bit of embellishment, transforming into a muddy and turbulent river. The structure of the wraith sign was hidden within the tightly woven lines. Then he drew a few sketched fish within these lines. They were either undulating within the waves, leaping out of the water, or diving to the bottom of the river. Their postures and temperaments were all different. They symbolized certain people in the conference room. But there was one thing that was the same. Every fish was bobbing within the river, affected by the waves and the current. Luonan used this to symbolize complex emotions and willpower. Lovego, small sate, next. Luonan drew a small boat on the surface of the river. The chains and anchors hung down to symbolize himself. Perhaps he was originally a member of the people bobbing within the river, but because of the heavily chained crow, his position was anchored and he was somewhat detached. As for He Yuan, her situation was similar to his. As a burner, she possessed the power of the format. She was like a reef in the water. As for the human-faced arachnid, it was a hunter hidden deep within the river. It used negative emotions as a primer, waiting for an opportunity to strike. It could permeate and exert influence on other people, but it could only meet force with force against Luo Nan and He Yuan. This was where his advantage lay. The tip of the pen reached this point, and a line of thought suddenly became clear in Luo Nan's mind. Picking Black Wolf to make a move shouldn't be a coincidence. How could the human-faced arachnid have the luck to randomly pick an awakened? Luo Nan thought about Shuelei. He was also an excellent resource. His blood and energy were abundant. He was a top-notch tonic. Perhaps the human-faced arachnid had chosen every single person present. It had made contact with every single person, but no one had detected it. Yes, there was a specter like this. It had once floated above everyone's head, and then it had chosen the one it liked the most. It was also the most unlucky one. Just like now, the wraith sign hidden in the turbid river was connected to every fish, through the lines that passed through it. Mr. Luo. What? Luo Nan woke up from his trance with a start and discovered that someone was greeting him. The one who spoke was a tall and skinny young man. His nickname should be Bamboo Pole. He always had a cheeky smile on his face. He looked like an optimist, but his words were very sharp. Mr. Luo's psychic ability, accuracy, and sharpness need not be mentioned. There have already been facts to verify it. Then what's the range of coverage? I heard President He say that we need to create tactics around psychics. Is it close combat or is it long-range bombardment? We need to figure this out, right? Luo Nan smiled bitterly and looked at Zhang Yingying. She was the one who put the hat on him. She was the one who explained it. Zhang Yingying glared back, but she still opened her mouth. Luo Nan just joined the society. He doesn't understand anything. He needs to let old you appraise him and give him some pointers. He needs to have a basic concept. But Bamboo Pole was unforgiving. I heard that Mr. Luo's psychic ability is presented in drawings? I've seen you draw and draw all this time. Do you have any inspiration? Well, not really. Of course Luo Nan wouldn't say that he was drawing a picture of them and that he felt that they were all going to be swallowed up. Luo Nan discovered that he was being targeted in response. This group of ability users had enough of quarreling internally. They began to exert their strength externally. He Yuan wasn't easy to deal with, so they picked a soft persimmon like him to pinch. When all was said and done, it was because he wasn't convinced. I saw it all. The one who raised her hand and laughed was a woman nicknamed Cat Eyes. She was roughly 30 years old and had a hot figure. She wore heavy makeup and looked like a bar dancer. Luo Nan had a deep impression of her because her ability was long-range perception. It was already very similar to a psychic. But it wasn't effective against dark-sider life forms. She played the role of a scout in the team. Now Luo Nan had seen it for himself. Separated by the conference table, he was at least 7 to 8 meters away from Cat Eyes. She could even see it? There were already people jeering at this time. Kitty, what did he draw? It's fine if Mr. Luo's face is tender. We can do it ourselves. Yeah. This is the first time I've seen this type. Kitty, you interpret it for us. Cat Eyes was the type who wished for the world to be in chaos. She didn't care about Luo Nan's expression and giggled as she opened her mouth to describe. This drawing has a very messy appearance. It's like a river. There are boats and reefs on the river. There are small fish swimming below. And then, Luo Nan was a bit helpless against this sort of noisy character. He wanted to put away the digital pen, but the pen tip sank a bit. It was as if an invisible thread had wrapped around it. There was a sudden reaction on the mental plane. The chains rattled and trembled. The wraith sign at the front also seemed to flicker with light. Luo Nan subconsciously moved his pen and a marvelous feeling appeared. It was as if he had brought something with him. Cat Eyes, who had been giggling, suddenly went mute at this moment. Blood seeped out from the corner of her eyes and she fell backwards. Chapter 74. A Genius in 1 Second Remembers Love? Speak, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. The chairs in the conference room were quite stable. Cat Eyes bumped into the back of the chair, causing it to sway slightly and push her body forward. Her entire body was as soft as a noodle. Clearly she had completely lost consciousness. She swayed a few more times before finally falling forward. Her forehead bumped into the conference table with a muffled sound. She did not react at all. The tip of the pen in Luo Nan's hand suddenly stopped. Aside from Cat Eyes' strange reaction, countless blurry and chaotic scenes suddenly exploded before his eyes. There were even more peculiar sounds, smells, and other signals. They surged over one after another. This was absolutely not the stimulation of his senses from the external environment. Instead, It was information signals that were directly transferred to his nervous system. There was no logic behind it. There was no distinction between primary and secondary. They just swarmed over like a swarm of bees. Luonan was already extremely familiar with how to deal with this enormous amount of information. He did not attempt to analyze it at all. Instead, he directly transmitted it through the heavily chained crow and sent it into the external neuron. Luonan was able to understand what this sudden and unforeseen event was all about because he had this familiar scene as a comparison. He had dug out a piece from the body of the human-faced arachnid in the elevator. He had received a large amount of energy and a huge amount of information that could make one's brain stop. Right now in the conference room, the impetuous woman Cat Eyes was using her ability to spy on Luonan's creation. Little did she know that this creation was a part of Luonan's ability to operate on the mental plane. Frankly speaking, this sort of spying was extremely stupid. Cat Eyes had swapped places with the human-faced arachnid. She took the initiative to deliver herself to Luonan's doorstep when Luonan's mental plane was the most active. Then she was pierced through by the heavily chained crow. The chains and the wraith sign dug out a piece from her without a trace of politeness. The contents involved Cat Eyes' most proficient memories of long-range perception. The specific contents would need to be analyzed by the external neuron. Bang! Someone slammed the table when they saw Cat Eyes' miserable appearance. Kid Luo, what the hell are you doing? Bang! Someone beside Luonan also slammed the table and stood up. You bunch of idiots. What the hell are you doing when a psychic is working? The one who stood up and roared was Zhang Yingying. Perhaps it was because she had an instinctive protective heart towards the talent she had unearthed herself. She stood up without the slightest hesitation and tore at her friend. Her imposing manner soared to the heavens. When old you burns the turtle shell, why don't you try pouring a basin of water on it? Why don't you try smashing old Gao's altar when he's casting the spell? Try slapping Lao Bai's face when he's in the dream. Even if you don't know about manners, you should at least know about taboos, right? Since when did shamans become someone you can flirt with at any time? After a round of reprimanding, regardless of whether they were convinced or not, the group of ability users were all dumbfounded. At this moment, Cat Eyes' shoulder moved. She began to show signs of regaining consciousness. The people at the side crowded around to take a look. Approximately 5 or 6 seconds passed before Cat Eyes finally regained her wits. She sat up straight with the help of someone. She blinked her eyes and had a blank expression on her face. What happened? Did he lose his memory? Someone stretched out his finger. Kitty, how many is this? Scram. Cat Eyes' vitality did not diminish in the slightest as she scratched with her long manicured fingers. She quickly recovered and began to feel annoyed that there were too many people crowding around her. She waved her hand to chase them away. Love, go, small say, Neku, what happened just now? Give me a clear explanation. How would I know? Cat Eyes' voice was sharp and clear when she spoke. But when she looked at Luonan, she clearly felt a bit weak. I was just looking at the painting and feeling the changes in his aura in passing. I wanted to see if this painting was for real or just to scare people. Oh. More than half of the people rolled their eyes. Just looking at the painting was fine. Why did you have to feel his aura? When a psychic was working, the rise and fall of his aura was equivalent to the life and death combat state of a combatant. A single mistake would cause a reversal. Who knew what the consequences would be? Zhang Yingying slammed the table on the spot. Kitty, do you not want to live anymore? Cat Eyes was clearly a bit embarrassed. I was just trying. I was just curious. There are a few psychics in this society. Each and every one of them are hidden like thieves. It's rare to see such an interesting lad. Mr. Luo? Yuan completely ignored the ruckus of these unreliable people. She noticed that Luonan had not opened his mouth to speak for a long time. Zhang Yingying turned her head when she heard this. She saw Luonan with his half-opened eyes and a stupefied expression. It didn't seem like he was angry. It seemed like he had lost consciousness. Cat Eyes. She no longer affectionately called her Kitty. She directly called her by her full nickname. This proved that Zhang Yingying was truly angry. Luonan is just a rookie. Do you understand? Plus, he's a gifted student, not a systematic student. He doesn't know any taboos. Especially psychics. They can't even protect him in time. Yet you purposely poke him. Do you even have the intelligence of a professional? Whether it was Cat Eyes or the friends by his side, they all knew that they had caused a huge disaster. Each and every one of them shrunk their heads, not uttering a single word. Yuan pressed against her ears for a moment. She frowned at Zhang Yingying and said, I've been looking for old you. I haven't been able to contact him. He might be in a psychic state. I don't know how to contact Mr. Gao and Mr. Bai. You contact them and ask how to handle this situation. Oh, okay. Zhang Yingying knew that the situation was urgent. She immediately did as she was told. Cough. I'm not a gifted student. I'm a systematic student. A sudden voice rang out. Luo Nan raised his half-closed eyelids and corrected Zhang Yingying's misunderstanding once more. Zhang Yingying was startled and then overjoyed. She wanted to pat Luo Nan on the shoulder, but she thought for a bit. In the end, she didn't dare to do so. She just slapped the table in passing. As long as you're fine, you'll be a systematic student in the future. In the future, if anyone is blind enough to dare say that you're a gifted student, I'll chop them in half. As she spoke, her gaze swept across the faces of a few unreliable fellows across from her. Cat Eyes immediately raised her hands in surrender. Yes, I'm a systematic student without a doubt. Even Cat Eyes, the instigator of all this, was kneeling. The others grunted and groaned. They could only tacitly agree to this preposterous classification. He Yuan's cold and hard fingers pressed against the side of Luo Nan's neck. She felt the amount of blood flowing through his aorta. Her other hand gently placed on his forehead. She spoke softly. Are there any symptoms of congestion or ischemia in your brain? Dizziness, blackness in front of your eyes? Luo Nan shook his head a bit awkwardly. I'm fine. Luo Nan really was fine. His mind was clear from the very beginning. The reason why he didn't react to the outside world was because his attention was completely focused on the external neuron. Though the two pieces of information that had been dug up could both be described as enormous, the contents of Cat Eyes' long-range perception were nothing in comparison. The external neuron was still in the process of analyzing the human-faced arachnid's information. However, Cat Eyes had already finished analyzing the information within a short dozen or so seconds. Luo Nan's mind stirred slightly and the interface of the flexible e-ink screen appeared on his retina. He noticed that the number of icons on the interface had changed once more. Chapter 75. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Show.net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Just like in the underground laboratory, on the main interface of the flexible e-ink screen, there was only one additional icon. It wasn't the previously existing gear, but it still had an extremely familiar appearance. The tetrahedron, inscribed sphere and circumscribed sphere. Luo Nan's visualization diagram. However, the icon was dark as a hole. It was as if an application had been downloaded, but the download and installation had not been completed. Most of it was still in the shadows and only a very small portion was lit up. The progress showed 1%. It was surprisingly slow. Luo Nan's telepathic thoughts swept over the surface. He made some basic information clear, but doubts followed. In the end, how much did he dig out from the body of the human-faced arachnid? If he wanted to express the theme, shouldn't it be displayed as Wraith Sign, or something? What did it have to do with visualization? These questions could only be answered after the download, analysis was completed. Luo Nan paid attention to another matter. The results of his analysis of Cat Eyes were not displayed on the main interface. He felt that there was a layer separating him from it when he wanted to touch it. There seemed to be some tricks to it. Hey, are you okay? Zhang Yingying, as well as the other people in the conference room, saw Luo Nan inexplicably enter a trance state after replying with a few sentences. Their hearts grew more and more uncertain. Being a shaman was a profession that involved mysterious things on the spiritual level. It was really not easy to grasp. Other than old Yu Gao Dishuan, who was well cultivated and didn't seem to have any abnormalities, the rest of the spirit mediums in the association were all a little neurotic. It was said that it had something to do with the backlash they received when they used their abilities in their early years. Zhang Yingying could not help but glare angrily at Cat Eyes, who knew that Luo Nan's line of sight would move at this time. He moved in sync with Zhang Yingying and pointed at Cat Eyes. Love, go, small, say, Neka. Cat Eyes was already a bit immune to Zhang Yingying's angry glare. But when Luo Nan looked at her with an unreadable expression, her heart suddenly skipped a beat. She was inexplicably nervous. Hey, what are you so nervous about? Even Cat Eyes herself could not bear to watch her overly abnormal emotions. She had always been a troublemaker. She was careless and her courage was outrageous. She had always prided herself on this. However, ever since she caused trouble just now, she felt that her heart had no roots and she had really become an obedient cat. Now that she was facing Luo Nan, the feeling of weakness continued to sprout. Finally, her self-consciousness counterattacked. He was yelled at by Zhang Yingying just now because they were friends. Who the hell do you think you are? Cat Eyes immediately widened her eyes. She glared back at Luo Nan, and her mouth became even more unrestrained. What? You want compensation? Sure, can I sleep with you? According to her observations of Luo Nan, this introverted and immature kid would most likely be unable to resist. In the end, Zhang Yingying would have to take the lead. When the time came, she would pester him endlessly for a bit and give him a more or less reasonable explanation. But the problem was that Luo Nan's gaze was completely devoid of any emotions that could be interpreted. Luo Nan was not affected by any external emotions, including Cat Eye's deliberate provocation. Luo Nan saw that Zhang Yingying wanted to slap the table again, but he just nodded to Cat Eyes. Come over and help me out, okay? Everyone in the conference room looked at each other in dismay. Cat Eyes pointed at herself and said, Me? Hold on. This posture is too weak. Cat Eyes wanted to flip out again, but Luo Nan had already lowered his head. His digital pen fell onto the flexible e-ink screen once more. What are you pretending for at such a young age? Cat Eyes let out a laugh. She suddenly jumped over from the table without any warning. Her 12-centimeter roots were as tall as the heavens, and she landed noiselessly. Her movements were nimble and she was truly like a large cat. The thick and dizzying smell of perfume covered the entire area. She supported herself on the table with one hand and half of her body turned into a shadow. She fell onto the flexible e-ink screen in Luo Nan's hand. Hey, pretentious kid. How do you want me to help you? It can't be that you can't draw a picture, so you want to find a scapegoat in the end, right? Luo Nan glanced at her. He just felt that this woman was unreasonable. But sudden inspiration was very precious. He didn't want to make a mistake, so he simply lowered his head and looked straight at the flexible e-ink screen. He said, Don't talk. Try your best not to let your imagination run wild. Look at this picture of mine. What do you think? You want to harm me again? Thinking back to the miserable state of her bloodshot eyes, Cat Eyes felt a bit weak in her heart. It wasn't easy for her imposing manner to rise, but it rapidly declined. Zhang Yingying pushed her from behind. I've already looked at it several dozen times. Nothing happened. You're clearly looking to die, okay? Who knows if you guys are having an affair or not? Cat Eyes casually mocked back. She squinted her eyes, looking as if she wanted to look but did not dare to look. Shut up. Luo Nan's commanding words entered her ears, and Cat Eyes' heart skipped a beat. She really did not speak anymore. Her eyes opened a bit and she looked towards Luo Nan's flexible e-ink screen. She had already used her long-range perception to scan this sketch, but she did not discover anything strange about it. But now that she obeyed Luo Nan's command, her gaze fell down, and the feeling was completely different. There were all sorts of figures on the sketch. For example, a small boat with chains hanging down. There were reefs that faced the wind and waves. They were all extremely eye-catching. But she inexplicably locked the focus of her gaze onto a certain fish that seemed to be swimming in circles within the muddy river. It looks a lot like me, an absurd thought assaulted her mind. Then she saw Luo Nan's digital pen fall down. It drew out many lines around the fish that she was gazing at. It even drew out its body. Strangely enough, her mind became a bit absent-minded when these lines appeared. It was as if the lines did not fall onto the flexible e-ink screen, but rather they were being pulled out from her body. There was an incorporeal specter reaching out with its hand. It seemed to be gently caressing, but it also seemed to be cutting into her internal organs and skull, dissecting her entire body. When this thought became clear, Cat Eyes' body froze on the spot. The group of ability users saw Luo Nan draw on the spot. Luo Nan's pretentiousness was raised high, and their curiosity was piqued. They all gathered around in a circle. From their perspective, Luo Nan's sketch appeared chaotic at first glance, but it was extremely intuitive. The originally chaotic interweaving river structure inexplicably cleared out a relatively clear trajectory as the tip of the pen moved. It clearly symbolized the route that the fish had taken to get here. Some of the quick-witted ones vaguely understood that this seemed to be tracing back to something that had happened before. Psychics could trace back to the past. They could foresee the future. The conference room was silent for a time. No one dared to disturb the work of a genuine psychic. Sister He. Luo Nan suddenly spoke once more. This was just a habitual action, but he quickly reacted. He switched to the psychic wave network and entered Project 001 to converse with He Yuan. At this time, a blurry figure appeared on the structural map of the Limestone Water Village pub. He tried to find a matching area within it. The problem was that Luonan was unfamiliar with the operation, so he could only seek help from others. Luonan and He Yuan's little movements could not be hidden from others. The group of ability users did not need to think to know what was going on. They immediately rushed into the encrypted channel and switched to Project 001. The only one who did not do this was Cat Eyes. At this very moment she was completely unable to divert any energy. Her legs, which were wrapped in black stockings, were trembling uncontrollably. If she had not used her hands to support herself on the table, she might have already fallen to her knees. That specter, that incorporeal specter, was not satisfied with dissecting her completely. It began to greedily devour her. Cat Eyes could only feel her strength rapidly draining away. Her consciousness grew more and more absent-minded. And the source of all of this? She could still see the tip of the pen on the flexible e-ink screen. It seemed to be flowing, but every minute pause was a heavy bombardment on the mental plane. Luonan. It could only be Luonan. This demon. Cat Eyes recalled the entire process from beginning to end and suddenly understood. This was clearly a conspiracy, a set of traps. It was a demon ritual that was publicly launched under the watchful eyes of everyone. Chapter 76. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Shoan.net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Under the stimulation of anger, Cat Eyes felt that her thoughts were unprecedentedly clear. She wanted to destroy this demon's scheme. She immediately opened her mouth to shout, but only then did she discover that not a single muscle in her body was listening to her commands. Anger was only a temporary flame, while fear was a boundless tide that would extinguish the flame as soon as it rose. At this time, all of Cat Eye's strength had melted away in the great tide of fear. At the same time, her will had melted away as well. In the tide of fear, feelings of regret began to emerge. This demon, he's been eyeing me for a long time? Or is it because I bumped into him? God, I'm so stupid. Amidst her self-reproach, Cat Eyes was like a sacrificial offering placed on an altar. Her body could not move, her mouth could not speak, and even her thoughts gradually stiffened. Only his blood and soul flowed out bit by bit, flowing to an unknown destination. She tried to find the home of her blood and soul, but in a daze, it was as if she had fallen into a boundless dark prison. In the restless darkness, the treacherous and cold 6 spots of light lit up. The blurry silhouette around it moved its many legs and gradually approached. His already stiff consciousness suddenly moved, receiving a stimulus. It was a vivid memory from the target's information. Human-faced arachnid? Why the human-faced arachnid? In her daze, no one could answer her questions, let alone ease her fear. When the human-faced arachnid's image became clear, the surrounding dark veil seemed to come alive. It possessed its own meaning. The twisting darkness at the front of the human-faced arachnid that was constantly drawing closer to her must be its ugly mouth. He was going to be chewed, corroded, and swallowed? No, absolutely not. Cat Eyes suddenly came to a realization that came from the spiritual perception of an awakened. It didn't matter if this was a devil's ritual or if it was a trap or a plot. If she was truly devoured by the human-faced arachnid right now, she would certainly be consigned to eternal damnation. She would never have the chance to start over again. Help, help. Someone save me. Cat Eyes howled at the top of her lungs in the gradually muddled mental plane. But on the plane of reality she merely hung her head and trembled slightly. Love Gong Small Say Net Chu. The more she sensed the real situation, the more despair she felt. What kind of power could confine her in this terrifying darkness? Was there no power that could save her? Voila! A strange trembling sound rang out. From the deepest part of the darkness, a long chain shimmering with a faint light suddenly pierced through. This was a change that Cat Eyes could not comprehend at all. But she was faced with the desperate situation of the human-faced arachnids devouring. She struggled to grab hold of any variable. If both of them were in a hopeless situation, she would choose the relatively better one. She focused all of her consciousness and screamed desperately, "Help, help!" The chains clearly sensed her summons and came crashing through the air. Cat Eyes did not have the slightest intention of evading. She allowed the chains to pierce through her body and pierce through her soul. She did not feel any pain. Instead, she felt a strange sense of support. She tried her best to penetrate the shackles into every corner of her body and mind. The walala trembling sound disappeared and was replaced by a strange ka-sua-sua-sua sound. Every time a chain was locked, it would be dead. From Cat Eyes' perspective, this represented a safety rope on the body of a person in danger. Every time a chain was locked, she felt a wonderful sense of security and satisfaction. Then, Cat Eyes felt herself rise up and gradually leave this darkness. Her strength gradually recovered and her consciousness entered the plane of reality. She faintly felt that something was wrong. But the incomparably realistic experience of the mental plane collided with reality. It was as if she was placed in a half-awake and half-awake dream. Everything that was inconceivable seemed to be as it should be. She even took the initiative to enter the psychic wave network and went to Project 001 where everyone was gathered. At this time, she was completely capable of letting out a cry for help that she had not been able to before. But this thought had just emerged when it was extinguished like a bubble in the face of enormous fear and uncertainty. Cat Eyes had a feeling that the chains that pierced through her body and soul were her support. But a single sound could strangle her to death. In other words, her life was completely in the hands of the chain's controller. This was completely illogical, but Cat Eyes did not have the courage to verify it in her current dazed and chaotic mental state. Right now, all she wanted was for this damnable operation to end quickly so that she could properly sort out the logic within. Or perhaps, the controller of the chain. Cat Eyes' gaze fell upon Luo Nan's body. It was him, this demon. It would be fine if he could give her a clear explanation. But from beginning to end, Luo Nan did not give her a single glance or a single hint. It was to the point that Cat Eyes sometimes wondered if everything that was happening before her eyes was just a hallucination of a mental patient. And at this time, an astonishing development occurred in Project 001. A low clamor sounded in the encrypted communications channel. It's right. It's right. Where is this? Everyone's attention was focused there, including Cat Eyes. The dream and reality were connected. The two mutually permeated each other. Everything became as it should be. Project 001 had already turned into a conference channel. Cat Eyes' late arrival did not attract anyone's attention. Everyone focused their attention on the structural diagram of Limestone Water Village Pub. The diagram that Luo Nan took out corresponded to a certain part of the diagram. The diagram that came from Luo Nan was a variant of a hexagram. The corners were slightly rounded. This sort of structure did not exist on any of the floors of the building. However, when Yuan changed her train of thought and piled up the floor plans of each floor, the answer suddenly appeared. It's the west side of the 16th, 17th, and 18th floors. The rooms of the 3 floors are grouped together. It belongs to a KTV club. Yuan came to a conclusion after looking through the hotel's information. The relevant information was immediately converted into psychic wave information and transmitted directly into everyone's brain. Yuan's move, even with the support of the Hexier, was an extremely high-level application on the mental plane. It was hard for normal awakened to even dream of it. But at this time, no one expressed any astonishment. This was because all the astonished emotions had long since been filled up by Luo Nan. Zhang Yingying's question represented practically everyone. What does this position represent? Is it the hiding place of the human-faced arachnid? Yes. I believe that this is just a place where it once stayed. Moreover, it played a crucial role in forming its current state. Luo Nan honestly explained according to the feeling he got from his drawing. He also felt that he was becoming more and more like a psychic. But you went straight to the 21st floor. You've never been here before, right? No. You've never been here before? This is my first time here. Even though the large living area had an awe-inspiring reputation within Acumen College, this was Luo Nan's first time here. On the other side, Bamboo Pole could not help but speak in doubt. Then how did you come up with this diagram? Out of thin air? Luo Nan still answered every question. I've never been here before. But Cat Eyes should have been here before. In an instant, everyone's gazes turned to Cat Eyes in unison. Chapter 77. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Show.net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Cat Eyes suddenly had a ridiculous feeling of absurdity as she faced everyone's gazes. Love go, small sake, neck you guys are searching for the human-faced arachnid here. Do you know that there is a fellow who can snatch food from the mouth of the human-faced arachnid sitting right next to you? But in the end she just replied blankly, I've been to the 18th floor and passed by this KTV, but I didn't feel any hexagram. Cat Eyes did not use the psychic wave network. Instead she spoke directly. This made her feel that she was a bit closer to reality. No one could understand her current state of mind. Everyone thought back to Luo Nan's request for Cat Eyes' help. Someone couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice, that's awesome. This is memory reading and subconscious digging. Lao Bai's dreamland technique? Old Bai's results are all messed up. How can it be so clear? Yes, it's completely graphic, so it's not easy to decipher. Hey Kitty, does it feel good to be dug so deeply? Finally, there was someone who was concerned about Cat Eye's condition. However, Cat Eyes responded with a 12-centimeter tall slender root. With a howl, the one with the foul mouth knelt down, hugging his feet. Yuan clapped her hands, getting everyone present to focus their attention. In any case, we must conduct an investigation. We must strive to understand the mysteries behind the growth of the human-faced arachnid strength. At the same time, you can also do some practice. The previous meeting had more or less produced some results. Yuan convinced this group of ability users. In this situation where they were unable to sense the human-faced arachnid, they had to formulate a strategy around Luonan in order to guarantee their safety and effectiveness. Due to the lack of time, they had only made a preliminary design. There were many details that had not been perfected. They could use this opportunity to demonstrate it on the spot. From the 81st floor to the 18th floor, the 63rd floor should be fine, right? No one answered and no one cowered. At a time like this, there must be no problem. Luonan looked all around. It seemed that he was the only one who didn't understand what was going on. That's right, when they were arguing just now, I was lost in thought. Currently, in the Limestone Water Village pub, there were a total of 12 members. Among them, the Black Wolf was heavily injured and unconscious, while the Black Beetle had long since left the team, leaving only 10 members. In addition, there were 4 professional bodyguards that Yuan had brought along. One of them was assigned to take care of Black Wolf, Shuele, and the others who were injured. This way there were a total of 13 people. This was precisely this centralized mode that Yuan had always advocated. Of course, this mode didn't mean that everyone had to squeeze into the same elevator. The 13 of them were divided into 2 groups. Luonan, Yuan, Zhang Yingying, the 3 bodyguards, and the Society's Crag Burst, a total of 7 people walked through the elevator. The power to protect Luonan was strengthened to the greatest degree. The other 6 people maintained a certain distance. They descended rapidly from the fire escape passageway and the inclined surface of the outer wall of the building. They formed a resonance with Luonan and the others. The Hexaear was used to maintain communication in the middle. In case they encountered an attack from the human-faced arachnid, or if Luonan formed a clear response, they would quickly form an encirclement of support. The strategy was simple and crude, but it was very suitable for this temporary combination. Only the awakened could achieve such a direct method of advancement. Among them, Cat Eyes was nimble and lithe as well as her long-range perception ability. She naturally became the scouting vanguard, and she was also one of the members that descended from the building. She shuttled back and forth amidst the interweaving lights and shadows of the building. The cold autumn night wind blew against her face. In the past it would have been so carefree. But now, it was unable to blow away the knot in her heart. Cat Eyes was still hoping that she would be far away from Luonan. The situation of being bound and restrained would take a turn for the better. But when she deliberately dashed forward, putting a distance of 100 meters between them, the incorporeal chains continued to exist. Some of the chains were even buckling together. They made a clicking sound that was neither too fast nor too slow that only she could hear. She could not help but tremble with every sound that rang out. Although the physical distance was pulled apart, she was clearly getting closer and closer to the master of the chains on the mental plane. It was absolutely not an emotional distance. Instead, it was a terrifying magnification and distortion. Luonan's current state of mind was tranquil and slightly depressed. From Cat Eye's perspective, it was like the gray clouds of the desert sky were pressing down on her head. She unconsciously felt a bit suffocated. She seemed to be able to hold on for now, but she did not dare to imagine what would happen to her if Luonan became irritable and furious. "Kitty, you're rushing forward too much," Zhang Yingying reminded her through the Hexaear. Cat Eyes snorted to herself. Her tall and slender roots drew a long mark on the glass wall, stopping her downward momentum. She speculated maliciously in her mind. Did Luonan tie up this Zhang Yingying long ago? Did she wag her tail and beg for pity? Does Her Majesty Empress Wu know about this? But soon reason and her senses simultaneously told her that this was clearly not the case. Up until now, she was the only unlucky person in the vicinity. This answer made Cat Eyes even more vexed. Currently, Cat Eyes was the first to reach the 20th floor. She had taken the 5 floors up and down, a vast area of 50 meters in diameter, into the range of her senses. According to the plan, she leaped into the hallway of the building and walked down the fire escape. At the same time she reported the situation, It really is a KTV. It's also a clubhouse, the kind that hurts the eyes. Humph, the age composition is seriously low. Young people these days. Cat Eyes entered the clubhouse, which was decorated in a blurry and strange style. It was like a maze, just like the vast majority of similar places. Cat Eyes was dressed in a fiery dancer outfit. She fit in quite well. The young boys passing by cast their gazes at her. Occasionally they would bump into a waiter, but they would be confused by the thick makeup on her face. In a moment of stupefaction they would pass by her. Cat Eyes swayed her long legs. She seemed to be leisurely, but she was actually very nimble as she passed through the rooms on the 3 floors. In the end she arrived at the 16th floor. According to the floor plan, this was one of the largest rooms in the hexagram structure. Right now, a fiery party was going on inside. Although she did not enter the room, her sight, hearing and smell had already clearly reproduced the situation inside with her long-range senses. Cat Eyes lazily transmitted, "No ability users have been discovered. Do you want to do an on-the-spot investigation?" This time it was He Yuan who spoke. "Don't destroy the scene. Wait until Mr. Luo arrives before handling it." Just as the call ended, someone swayed over from behind. It was a young lad. His age could not be over 20, but it was clear that he was very experienced. He pretended to be dizzy and simply reached out with his hand to touch Cat Eyes' perky buttocks. However, when he was 2 centimeters away, the young drunkard felt a pain in his wrist. He inexplicably swung his body to the side and slammed into the wall with a bang. The young drunkard was in a daze. Just as his anger was rising, he was suddenly dumbfounded. Cat Eyes was silently leaning against the wall to the side. The sexy curves in the tight sequin dance costume, the long legs wrapped in black stockings, and the thin and tall legs that stretched the soles of her feet, together with the wall and the floor, naturally formed a soul-stirring shape. Her casually scattered short curly hair covered a small half of her face. Her fiery red lips faintly opened and closed, forming a smile that was not a smile. "Little brother, do you have a cigarette?" The young drunkard immediately forgot about his previous encounter. He chuckled foolishly, "I don't have any on me, but I do have some inside. Our Mystic Arts Research Society does this. Let's go together." He reached out with his hand to touch Cat Eyes' towering chest. However, what welcomed him was the world spinning once more. This time, his head slammed into the wall and he immediately fainted. Chapter 78. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Speak, net, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Cat Eyes exerted her strength ingeniously. She let the young drunkard support himself with his shoulders and feet. He was half leaning and half crooked, maintaining his body from falling. Love Gon Little Say, Netko. In addition to the flirtatious beauty at his side, it was a typical case of a pervert meeting a flirtatious ghost. They were about to fool around together. The waiters that passed by occasionally cast curious glances at them at most. They didn't have any other reactions. Cat Eyes just waited at the door. She even had the leisure to pull out a lady's cigarette and light it. She casually asked in the channel, "What the hell is the Mystic Arts Research Society?" There are 6 schools nearby. There are 4 societies with the same name. The Mystic Arts has been quite popular in recent years. The figure just now was a variation of the Star of David. It doesn't seem like a coincidence. Bamboo Pole, who was in charge of intelligence work, indicated for Cat Eyes to lift up the drunkard's face. He gave her a face recognition and soon came to an answer, Huang Bingjin. Acumen College's Mystic Arts Research Society officer. He's a rich second generation. Acumen College. Zhang Yingying let out an unclear laugh. Unfortunately, no one besides Luo Nan understood. Bamboo Pole continued. In addition, I discovered something amazing in the club's database. Take a look at what it is. A contact list. They're all female students. The information is complete. The types are plentiful. There's everything you need. Wow. A strange silence appeared in the channel until Crag Burst, who was next to Luo Nan, cursed and revealed the secret. They're charging by the head. Bamboo Pole, why don't you go die? Crag Burst was a 2-meter-tall brawny man. He had spent nearly 10 years in the military. His temperament was a bit coarse, but he was an extremely good choice for a bodyguard and shield. It was because of his military background that he was the most respectful and cooperative towards He Yuan. Love Go Little Say, Netku. He instinctively glanced over, but He Yuan's expression didn't change. It was as if she hadn't heard a thing. Bamboo Pole didn't forget about proper business in the private channel. The database contains the agreement signed between the club and Acumen College's Mystic Arts Research Society. You can see that the club was renovated 4 years ago in accordance with the design requirements of the society. At the same time, this club is also a big financial backer of the club. The funds listed in the public accounts are more than 7 figures every year, and it's even more unclear in private. The elevator had already reached the 16th floor. Unlike Cat Eyes, this group of people was too big of a target. The waiter came over early to inquire about them. He Yuan ignored him and directly asked Luonan, "Mr. Luo?" Luonan raised his head and looked at this strange and indistinct clubhouse space. The basic characteristic of the coating on the outer wall was that it was made up of peculiar tree vines and decorative designs that encircled the mysterious circular structure of a magical array. The dim, dark red streams of light were like solvents entering tubes in a laboratory. They passed through the vines and patterns on the wall and traveled among the seemingly independent magic circles. Luonan looked for quite a while before speaking in a low voice. "The lighting effects here are quite interesting." The waiter clearly saw who was standing in the middle of the crowd and immediately revealed a standard smile. "The style of our clubhouse was planned and designed by a professional mysticism team in order to bring our customers a brand new and special experience." Luonan interrupted the waiter's cliché, "Prepare a private room for us. Also, are the members of the Mystic Society still in 1613? Luonan was referring to the room that Cat Eyes had locked onto. The waiter nodded and Luonan headed over there. He Yuan ordered the 3 bodyguards to wait in the private room first. Zhang Yingying had the waiter prepare a fruit platter and red wine. She had the appearance of meeting a guest before having fun. At the same time, He Yuan issued an order on the psychic wave network. Octopus. Hallucinogen. Several seconds later, a young man wearing a funny cartoon t-shirt and a jacket came out from a nearby restroom. He greeted Cat Eyes, who was waiting outside 1613, and directly pushed open the door to enter. Cat Eyes grabbed the young drunkard next to her and entered the private room right behind him. The overall structure of 1613 was an extremely standard circular shape. The dazzling projection equipment in the center was designed in the form of a very peculiar lampstand. Right now, it ignited with an ambiguous pink glow, smearing the dusky room into an even more chaotic mess. There were no sofas, chairs, or the like in the private room. There were only a few soft cushions. Everyone was casually sitting on the ground. There were 20 to 30 people playing and accompanying. But right now, these people were already under the dual effects of their own drugs and Octopus's hallucinogen. Their consciousness was in chaos. They were either men and women hugging each other or laughing and crying. They were completely unaware of the changes in the outside world. Even Octopus did not expect this excessively intense result. He was currently adjusting the composition of the drug in a flurry to avoid creating a group of idiots. Cat Eyes rolled her eyes at him and casually tossed the drunkard to the ground. "Hurry up. We're already outside." A knock rang out from the door as they spoke. The waiter was the first to walk in. He saw this scene, but he didn't seem surprised at all. He very naturally spoke to Octopus, who was standing there in a clear-headed state. "A guest has come to visit." Luonan and his group walked in as they spoke. "Ah, Lil Nanster." Octopus didn't care about the drug. He had a pleasantly surprised appearance of seeing an old friend. He laughed heartily as he walked forward and gave Luonan an extremely forceful hug. His clumsy and pale acting made He Yuan frown. However, the waiter really didn't notice anything out of the ordinary. He turned around and left after Zhang Yingying took the fruit platter and red wine. The scene of a dove occupying a magpie's nest was completed. Luonan coughed as he pushed Octopus away. He also stopped his passionate patting. He looked around the room and saw the chaotic situation. For a time he didn't know what to say. Zhang Yingying casually picked up a piece of fruit and sent it into her mouth to taste. She said vaguely, "Are you disappointed? It looks like you were nearly one of them." Luonan responded casually, "It looks like there are quite a few places where I can be of use. I don't have to worry about not having a spot in the future." Luonan no longer paid attention to Zhang Yingying. He turned to Octopus with a smile. "Bro Octopus, your drug concoction is quite beautiful. Please give me some pointers in the future." Octopus was baffled. He could only laugh. "Well said, well said." Cat Eyes shot him a cold glance and directly fired a map cannon. A bunch of trash. This group of people turned from guest to host. They greeted and chatted within the room, but He Yuan didn't forget the most important matter from beginning to end. She looked all around at the decorations of the room and the decorations on the walls. her brows furrowed tighter and tighter. She stepped over the bodies lying on the ground and walked to the center of the projection equipment. She carefully observed the extremely medieval style of the lamp stand. Luonan didn't bother with Zhang Yingying and the others right now. He continued to observe and sense, but his attention was placed on the rather gorgeous pattern of the floor. Under the cover of the bodies, the pattern seemed to be broken and continuous. It passed through the transfer of many geometric figures to converge towards the central region. Finally, Luonan's gaze also cast towards the lamp stand. He just so happened to collide with He Yuan's gaze. "Mr. Luo?" Luonan nodded towards her. The human-faced arachnid should have appeared here before. Chapter 79. I think that the surrounding things are all its nourishment. Luonan pointed at the surrounding squirming and giggling human bodies. The human-faced arachnid really did have a special fondness for these negative emotions and desires. He hesitated for a moment before continuing to speak. There are also these patterns. They count as magical arrays. I know very little about the mystic arts. Are there any that I'm good at? Zhang Yingying immediately raised her hand from behind. Does my experience with tarot cards count? He Yuan saw that Luonan wanted to say something but hesitated. She directly said, "Right now, Mr. Luo, you are the only one among us who has the qualifications to make a judgment about the human-faced arachnid. There is no need to introduce other explanations." Zhang Yingying stuck out her tongue. Luonan scratched his head, but in the end he continued, "In the beginning I thought that these decorations, the vines, the patterns and the magical arrays were all just for show. They had no real meaning. But here a portion of the patterns seem to have displayed their use. They are like water channels gathering a portion of energy here." Luonan pointed at the projector in the form of a lamp stand. He didn't need to bring out his psychic abilities. He just needed to use his eyes to do this. The geometric patterns and the lamp stand left behind remnants similar to the dark red spores on the warship, but they were also slowly evaporating. He Yuan couldn't see these residues, but she took out a small and exquisite spray from her pocket and sprayed it on the lamp stand. After 2 seconds, the light screen that came with the spray flickered with a faint light. Luonan could roughly guess that this should be a special substance similar to the shadow mist. It was capable of capturing traces of the Darksider species interfering with the real world. Indeed, there are remnants of the relevant race. Zhang Yingying walked over at this time. She pressed down on Luonan's shoulder and looked at the lamp stand. A while passed before she spoke to He Yuan, who was carefully observing as well. "The matter seems to be complicated. Does it involve a secret order?" He Yuan grunted but didn't immediately respond. Secret order? Luonan didn't understand. An inexplicable and troublesome organization of lunatics. Luonan stared at her. "You said that ability users don't have secret societies and the like. Nothing is absolute in this world and it's not a secret society, it's a cult, okay?" Zhang Yingying saw that He Yuan didn't respond for a time. She faced Luonan and shrugged her shoulders. "Think about it. There are 600,000 ability users in the entire world. The number of people who have a relatively complete cultivation system and have cultivated in a down-to-earth manner is at most a tenth. As for the remaining 500,000 or so, many of them have inexplicably acquired certain abilities. If no one guides them in time, many of them will start to become arrogant and consider themselves to be new human beings or children of God. They think that they are at the peak of mankind and can do whatever they want. That's what happens in many novels and comics, right? It's useless. This is the reality. Of course, most of these idiots would be taught a lesson by the police. If you can't even beat the exoskeleton armors, then don't brag about being a child of God or a holy infant. For those who are more troublesome, the burners of the military will meet them. After that, the association will communicate with them and welcome them into the organization to correct their worldview." Zhang Yingying spread her hands, "But in the end there are still some very special fellows. They should be considered the gifted among the gifted. They are indeed extremely powerful. Even within the society, I'm afraid they are the most top-notch. It's not easy to communicate with them. They don't agree with the society's definition of the ability system. Instead, they have another kind of explanation. But their explanations often use their own abilities to forcefully apply myths, religions, mystic arts and other existing theories. Or they go wild with their imaginations and change their appearances. The final result is establishing sects and religions. There are many secret sections. These people want to put their exotic theories into practice in the world. They want to verify the holes in their imaginations. That's how they establish themselves. The problem is that they themselves are very powerful, but their related theories are very preposterous. If you cultivate according to their theories, most people will die very miserably. But there's no other way. Magical powers are more awesome than 10,000 sentences of truth. There are still large batches of people who join these sections. They offer their everything and are extremely devout. The government has a huge headache over these things. Of course, the society has a huge headache as well. Luo Nan heard the hidden meaning in her words. In other words, the society can't do anything about them. It's holding back for fear of hurting the innocent. The leaders of these sects are brainless, but their strength is really very strong. Plus, these sects are deeply rooted in the cities. With the current population density, it would be better to just drop a nuclear bomb in the center of the city if they really were to turn hostile. Don't doubt me. Think about the human-faced arachnid. There's also the R&D district. Luo Nan was speechless for a time. He was a bit spellbound. Could those powerful ability users really possess the terrifying destructive power of a nuclear bomb? He was stimulated by this information. After coming back to his senses, he simply poured out the series of questions he had been suppressing at the bottom of his heart. Then how does the society define the ability system? In the end, what counts as an awakened? And what level am I at right now? Zhang Yingying's mouth and tongue were already parched from explaining the secret order. She was busy eating fruits to replenish herself. She waved her hand when she heard Luo Nan's words, speaking vaguely. You already have the Hexa ear. Go take a look for yourself. I believe that Mr. Luo has already reached a certain level. He has even surpassed the level of a normal awakened. However, he is severely biased towards a certain field. He Yuan suddenly joined this topic and gave a relatively clear judgment. Zhang Yingying went hey and cried out, let's not talk about this for now. How's the matter with the order? Luo Nan wanted to slap her. In the end, He Yuan was a bit more concerned about proper business. She responded, I've already notified the society. We'll be retreating for now. No way? What a strong start and a weak finish. Octopus, who was hurrying to adjust his medicine, raised his head. We're disbanding just like this? Actually, a certain order leader has already protested against the society's actions. We've interrupted their holy ritual. Octopus was shocked. We've been discovered? Luo Nan was quite baffled. How were we discovered? Cat eyes glared at him for no reason at all. So you're blaming me? Zhang Yingying's attention was focused elsewhere. Holy? Ritual? Here. She simply tossed away the fruit platter, spread her hands and laughed out loud. She didn't know who was the one who said things like, fear of harming the innocent, just now. He Yuan responded in the calmest manner towards the different reactions of the people in the room. There's no reasoning to speak with those order leaders. And the methods of the secret order really do exceed common sense. In any case, we're dealing with the human-faced arachnid, not the secret order. This operation is halted and we're retreating. I will compile all matters into a brief and submit it to the society. It will be sent to everyone's hands. The speech this time was conducted through the psychic wave network. Immediately, the encrypted channel was filled with sighs and strange cries. Zhang Yingying raised her eyebrows. This order leader has jumped quite high. Are you sure they aren't colluding with the human-faced arachnid or something? What's their name? Show us. He Yuan didn't say anything. She just tilted her head and indicated for Zhang Yingying to look at the center of the room. There was a projection device in the shape of a lampstand. It was unknown when, but the burning pink glow of the lampstand had already disappeared. Instead, a new image appeared on the two sides of the edge. There were two sets of thin chains hanging down, each pulling a flat plate. One plate was black and the other was white. They were symmetrical and hung motionless in the air, forming the classic form of a scale. At this moment, Zhang Yingying grinned. She wanted to say something but she didn't open her mouth in the end. Instead, Octopus let out a low cry. Chapter 80. Luo Nan looked at the group of people who were either shocked or had serious expressions. This time, Luo Nan didn't ask any more questions. He directly searched the Hexaear for an answer. Through a mental search, the standard answer quickly jumped out. The Order of Justice was one of the 3 world-level secret orders. It was also the only secret order known to the world that worshipped a holy object. It didn't have a clear inclination towards worshipping a personified god. The highest leader of the order was called the First Ablatum. The holy object of the order was called the Scales of Truth. Its basic teachings were extremely vague. There were only a few words: the fairness of the world, the justice of truth. Within the order, they were passionate about sacrificial rituals. They were known to use a fair exchange to realize the balance of the world. Truthfully speaking, Luonan didn't understand half of it even though he had seen some introductions. There were some conceptual things that needed to be understood individually. At this time, He Yuan officially issued the order to retreat. After coming out of the private room, the temporary team had disbanded. He Yuan was still extremely strict. She informed every member that they shouldn't linger near Sky Capital Water Village until the society came up with a new opinion. It was best not to act alone. Although the human-faced arachnid had been heavily injured by her format of fire and it might not be able to launch its next wave of attacks in a short amount of time, ability users who were alone were clearly the best tonic for it. "Oh my, I'm in such a sorry state." Bamboo Pole let out a sigh and said, "Good night everyone," before logging off. The other avatars in the encrypted communications channel disappeared one after the other. Luonan took the initiative to call out to Octopus. He added this drug concoction expert as a friend, ready to ask for help at any time. At the same time, he sent a request to Cragburst and Cat Eyes. Cragburst was very straightforward and responded very quickly. But Cat Eyes snorted coldly and just left. Luonan shrugged. He could feel that Cat Eye's attitude towards him had become increasingly vile after they completed the psychic drawing together. "Hey, be careful. Cat Eyes holds a lot of grudges." Octopus had a pretty good impression of Luonan. He patted Luonan on the shoulder and left with Cragburst. Luonan felt quite innocent. What did he do to Cat Eyes? The initial backlash was caused by Cat Eyes using her ability to spy on his psychic process, summoning the heavily chained crow to counterattack. Or could it be said that the psychic senses of an awakened made her feel that a piece of her information had been dug out? "You must have been too rough." Zhang Yingying giggled as she patted his back. "Don't be fooled by Cat Eyes' flirtatious appearance. In fact, I've never seen her have a boyfriend since she joined the guild." Maybe she's a reserved old virgin? Was this a joke a woman should make? Luonan was disinclined to pay attention. It was He Yuan who turned around and unexpectedly joined the conversation. "Mr. Luo, regarding the matter of Cat Eyes, your previous etiquette was a bit inappropriate." In the process of creating the psychic diagram, Mr. Luo should have probed and used Cat Eyes' memories and subconscious. In a certain sense, this constitutes an infringement on her free will. Of course, Mr. Luo must have done it unintentionally, but it would be better to apologize afterwards. Luonan went, a bit embarrassed. He Yuan continued to supplement his general knowledge in this area. As a spiritually strengthened ability user and psychic, Sir Luo will definitely encounter similar problems in the future. However, you just need to remember one thing. Ability users are extremely sensitive to free will, so prior communication and subsequent explanations are extremely necessary. Naturally, Luonan humbly accepted the teachings. At this moment, he thought of the evaluation that was interrupted by Zhang Yingying. It seemed that if he didn't clarify the situation now, he wouldn't have a chance today. "Sister He, you said I'm seriously biased?" He Yuan also thought of this matter. After a moment of silence, she said, "If I were to evaluate Mr. Luo's ability on the mental plane, I would look at it from the effects of dealing with the human-faced arachnid. I will give you a C+, or even a B-. However, your body can only be an F, nothing more." Zhang Yingying laughed and said, "It can't be any less. Any less and I'll be a cripple." The corner of Luonan's mouth twitched. His body shouldn't be at this level. He had been training for many years. His toughness and agility should be above average. He Yuan coldly shot a glance at Zhang Yingying and solemnly said, "The consequences of a serious imbalance between the mind and the body are 100 times more serious than being crippled. Be it the military or quantum holdings, there were countless bloody examples. The reason why I'm doing this is that I hope Mr. Luo can take this seriously." Zhang Yingying was unable to continue laughing. Luonan was also speechless. Since Mr. Luo mentioned the format before, let's talk about the format. I can understand the meaning of the format that Mr. Luo spoke of. It's different from the archetype format that I'm used to. It should pay more attention to individual characteristics. Is this right? Luonan thought for a moment and reluctantly nodded his head. He Yuan focused her gaze on Luonan. "If you view the format as a type of building, artists can erect skyscrapers with toothpicks. Designers can complete a complete set of blueprints on the computer. But those are just models. They are just data. Truly practical buildings must be constructed using qualified and durable building materials. After all, the first essence of a building is practicality." If it's as Mr. Luo says, you possess an effective format. Then please choose the most suitable building materials for you and complete this building in a solid manner. This involves a complete transformation of your body's composition and mental willpower. It's absolutely not just visualization on the mental plane. If it's just data, then it's a bit better. But if it's an exquisite yet fragile piece of toothpick art that exists in the real world, it would collapse with a single breath. It would be meaningless. Aha! A toothpick-type man. Zhang Yingying clapped her hands in laughter. She didn't mind sprinkling salt on Luo Nan's wounds in the slightest. Who knew that He Yuan would change her target in the next moment? Miss Zhang. I know that you don't have any ill intentions towards Mr. Luo. But for a newcomer like him, your habitual jokes or exaggerated expressions are very easy to mislead. Just like with regards to the issue of secret orders, even though I don't like the way secret orders do things, I know that every secret order on record has a leader with an ability value of A. In the society's 3 levels of ability system, awakened, engineer, and extraordinary, they are at the top. They are powerhouses that stand at the peak of the world, and they also possess outstanding intelligence. They are absolutely not the powerful madmen that you speak of. You have a plan in mind, but it's very easy for you to cause Mr. Luo to misunderstand and form a wrong impression. For a psychic, this kind of wrong impression is very likely to be fatal. Zhang Yingying choked for a moment. Soon her eyebrows jumped up. She had made a mistake in her previous actions and received He Yuan's criticism. She had nothing to say. But right now, even her usual way of doing things had been reprimanded to the point of being useless. He Yuan, you really think too highly of yourself. Luo Nan felt that the atmosphere between the two was extremely tense, but it was all related to him. He felt a bit awkward for a time. Right when he was thinking about how to mediate, his wristband vibrated. Luo Nan's eyelids jumped when he saw the number. He rushed to connect. Auntie? Chapter 81. I'm still upstairs. Luo Nan was unable to mediate the conflict between the two ladies. He took 2 steps forward and responded in a low voice. There was no doubt that his aunt was waiting somewhere nearby, waiting for the cold dinner to end. Luo Nan didn't feel the slightest bit surprised at this sort of stalking behavior. His aunt had this sort of temperament. She was determined to bring him home tonight. She wouldn't give Luo Nan any reason to refuse. If it were a few days ago, Luo Nan would have done everything possible to escape his aunt's evil clutches. But right now his drug production was in a state of shortage. There was nothing to do even if he returned to Blue Bay Community. His thoughts of refusing weren't that firm. Luo Nan resisted a few more times, but in the end he threw in the towel and admitted defeat. I'm with a friend right now. I'll be down soon. Where are you, Aunt? I'll come find you in a bit. Admitting defeat to his aunt wasn't a big deal, but Luo Nan still had some reservations. The effects of the withdrawal reaction couldn't be ignored. Suddenly cutting off the drug supply could very well lead to some abnormal changes in his nervous system. His formatting had just shown results. What should he do if it regressed because of this? Luo Nan looked at the friend list on the Hexier and gained a bit of confidence. It seemed that he really did have an additional channel of choice after joining the society. Luo Nan first dealt with his aunt with grunts and then turned to ask Zhang Yingying, Octopus Bro is very good at making drugs. Does he sell them to the outside world? Zhang Yingying blurted out, who are you harboring evil intentions towards? There was no way to communicate. Sister you just have to display your invincible might and correct her 3 distorted views. Luo Nan rolled his eyes. He felt that it was more appropriate to directly communicate with Octopus Bro. But Zhang Yingying wasn't happy, probably because his expression was too obvious. She wrapped her arms around his neck. Hey, speak clearly. What the hell do you want? 9.5 out of 10 people who do business with Octopus Bro aren't good people. Oh, wait a minute. Zhang Yingying suddenly reached out and pulled at his face. Of course, Luo Nan wouldn't let her move, but this woman's strength far exceeded his by who knows how many levels. He was simply unable to resist. How many times had this happened? Luo Nan's face was flushed red. He was unable to suppress his anger. He Yuan frowned and wanted to stop her, but Zhang Yingying looked as if she had let go of all past grievances. She called out to her, come. Let's take a look. I've always felt that the color of this kid's pupils was abnormal, as if he had taken too many drugs. Tell me, do you usually have this kind of bad habit? Why was he suddenly so sharp? Luo Nan was shocked. He forgot to struggle and Zhang Yingying forced his eyelids open. However, what could she see under the dim lighting of the clubhouse? He Yuan pulled Zhang Yingying's arm and said in a low voice, "Stop fooling around. We haven't left the church's territory yet." Luonan finally broke free from Zhang Yingying's grip, but he still clenched his teeth in depression. What was up with this woman's monstrous strength? In the eyes of an awakened, was his body so weak that it was close to being crippled? He secretly swore that he would communicate with Zhang Yingying again after he achieved the balance of his body and mind and truly became an awakened. In any case, after He Yuan's interruption, Zhang Yingying didn't pursue the matter of him taking drugs. Luonan didn't want to stay with Zhang Yingying for a while. He wanted to leave, but he remembered that Shuelei and Qin Xiaolin were still on the 81st floor. He had to go take a look at the situation. Luonan arrived at the floor without incident. He had just opened the elevator door when chaotic sounds came from the corridor. Luonan didn't care at first, but after a few steps he saw figures scattered in front of him. There were waiters, medical staff, He Yuan's bodyguards and so on. They were conversing outside the door. Shuelei, who was supposed to be lying in the room, had his head lowered as he leaned against the wall. He looked very dejected. Luonan had a good impression of this student who had a straightforward personality and high martial strength. After fighting side by side, the feeling was different. He immediately walked over and asked probingly, "Lei, are you okay?" Shuelei raised his head when he heard the voice. His eyes lit up when he saw Luonan. "Nanster, are you okay?" "Just now." Sigh. Shuelei didn't know where to begin with a multitude of things. In the end, he could only wave his hand, unable to continue. "What happened?" He Yuan asked the bodyguard in charge of taking care of the patients. The bodyguard had a bitter smile on his face as he explained the situation that had occurred. Of the 3 patients, Shuelei had only been knocked unconscious by He Yuan. He didn't have any injuries, so he woke up the earliest. He was easy to talk to and was easily pacified. Then he went to take care of his unconscious girlfriend until the doctor He Yuan invited arrived. Black Wolf's spine was fractured, so he was carried away for surgery early on. Qin Xiaolin was treated on the spot. Qin Xiaolin was fine when she didn't wake up. But when she woke up and saw Shuelei, her emotions were agitated. She was afraid. She was angry. She was sad. She chased Shuelei out of the room. She even alarmed the waiters on the floor. She lost control of her emotions? Luonan immediately thought of the human-faced arachnid. Clearly He Yuan was thinking the same thing. The two looked at each other and headed into the room. He Yuan blocked him and Zhang Yingying took his place. The smile on this girl's face was much fainter. Her body had a clear and sharp aura. She was clearly ready to go. But after entering the room, Luonan's eyes were filled with nothing abnormal. Qin Xiaolin was in deep sleep on the bed. Aside from being weak, there were no traces of the human-faced arachnid. The 3 people exchanged glances. They were all a bit stunned. The doctor was very dissatisfied with the 3 people who suddenly squeezed in. The patient has just been injected with a tranquilizer. She needs to rest. All unrelated people leave. He Yuan confirmed with Luonan that the human-faced arachnid really didn't exist. Then she indicated to Luonan and Zhang Yingying to leave first. She stayed behind to talk with the doctor. He Yuan walked out of the room after a few minutes. Luonan asked her, "What's going on?" "Symptoms of stress. It's hard to understand facts that surpass one's common sense. Refusal to come into contact with facts, severe rejection or selective forgetfulness. The members of the society often encounter these kinds of things." Zhang Yingying shrugged. "I've long since suggested that the scope of common sense of ordinary people should be expanded in time to let them get used to accepting the existence of ability users. Humph humph. Mutants, those unscientific things, have been wreaking havoc for decades. Many people are still burying their heads in the sand." Luonan understood. So it turned out that Qin Xiaolin was unable to accept the sudden life and death battle between Shuelei and the Black Wolf. Then there was the human-faced arachnid, and even the influence of Luonan's hypnosis technique. He Yuan suggested, "It's better to let your friend go home first. He'll only make the patient more nervous if he stays by her side." Zhang Yingying shot a glance at the still dejected Shuelei. "This friend of yours is quite the material. His foundation is much better than yours. His adaptability is also quite strong. He should be the disciple of some martial arts master." Luonan approved of this conjecture. Shuelei's reaction in the elevator was truly admirable. He even suspected that this big guy should have an intuitionistic response to the threat of the human-faced arachnid. However, Zhang Yingying was serious for less than 10 seconds before she began to run her mouth again. "This pair is clearly bragging. Why don't I introduce your friend to the society? You can go to the society and find your own kind." This kind of sunny and strong man is definitely more popular than some toothpick guy. Luo Nan glared at her and asked He Yuan about Qin Xiaolin's treatment situation. Then he walked toward Shuelei. Senior sister Qin doesn't have any problems. The doctor will take good care of her. We can't help much here anyway. Let's go home first. Shuelei shook his head as expected. I'll wait here. Luo Nan pressed down on his arm. Senior sister Chen will be sent to the hospital to receive follow-up treatment. She just needs to be quiet for a few days in this kind of situation. She also needs to be quiet for a bit. Let's go. It's getting late. My aunt's car is downstairs. She'll give you a ride. Shuelei clearly hung his head even lower when he said the word quiet. Luo Nan sighed and used a bit of strength to pull Shuelei up. Of course, Shuelei's mind was definitely shaken right now. Otherwise, how could he move? Luo Nan and Shuelei left side by side after greeting He Yuan, Zhang Yingying, and the others. They entered the elevator, and it just so happened to be the one where Shuelei and He Lang had fought. Shuelei stared blankly at the remnants of the collision marks on the inner walls of the elevator. He suddenly spoke. You guys aren't normal people, right? You're not either. It's fate. Chapter 82. Luo Nan's consciousness was like a pearl that had sunk into the cold depths of the sea. It was like a lonely star that hung in the dark void. Sometimes it sank into darkness, and sometimes it shone brightly. In the end, pure light and darkness determined their respective domains. All sorts of silhouettes and lines began to appear at the boundary between light and darkness. Pillows, bedside cabinets, table lamps, desk. From near to far, layer after layer expanded outwards. The simple concept and the familiar way of combining them formed a clearer meaning. Luo Nan made a judgment. He was in his own room, but he wasn't in the apartment in Blue Bay Community. Instead, he was on the east side of the second floor of his aunt's house. He had lived there for 5 years. Even more thoughts poured into his mind. Gear, human-faced arachnid, explorers society. He Yuan, Zhang Yingying, Xie Junping. All sorts of images and clues interweaved to form a complete chain of cognition. Luo Nan finally found the node before he lost consciousness. The operation at Limestone Water Village pub had stopped. He sent Shuelei home. Then he seemed to have fallen asleep in his aunt's car. Then what time was it? Just as this thought stirred, the wristband on his wrist, the table lamp clock on the bedside cabinet, and the flexible e-ink screen within the notebook all lit up at the same time. 2:27 in the morning. Luo Nan suddenly opened his eyes and sat up. But then his waist, thighs, and calves transmitted a feeling of tightness and soreness. His calves were as hard as iron and stone. They were cramping. Luo Nan sucked in a breath of cold air. He crossed his legs and kneaded them. It took a long time for him to recover. But his fingers and toes felt swollen and numb. His blood and energy were stagnant and blocked. His stomach and intestines were convulsing, making his throat feel a bit nauseous. This was without a doubt a withdrawal reaction. Such a situation was within Luo Nan's expectations. He composed himself and did his best to ignore it. The AI system sensed his continuous movements and confirmed that the owner of the room had woken up. The system had no intention of going back to sleep and automatically turned on the wall lights. Luo Nan turned his head to look all around. Various furnishings appeared in his field of vision. They were exactly the same as what he had sensed on the mental plane. Of course, the most important thing was that the current time was 2:29 p.m. Luo Nan's mental senses were clearly accurate without error when he was tormented by his drug withdrawal reaction. Luo Nan closed his eyes once more, clearing his distracting thoughts. Sure enough, a clear picture appeared in his mind. The range wasn't very far. When it passed through the room and reached the corridor, it became dark and indistinct. It had already reached its limit. Calculating, it was about a 5-meter radius. Compared to Cat Eye's long-range perception, it was nothing at all. But it must be known that Luo Nan could only use the heavily chained crow or use the out-of-body state in order to accomplish this. But now it was natural. It seemed like his body and spirit were also constantly adapting to this ability, integrating it into the most natural level. Alright, he was no longer an ordinary person anymore. Luo Nan was just about to test out his new ability when a bloated figure tiptoed through the hallway at this time, entering the range of his senses. Luo Nan shook his head. He resisted the uncomfortable feeling of soreness throughout his body, got off the bed, walked to the door and opened it. Hiss! The person passing by his door was so startled that her hair was about to float up. But soon she was able to clearly see who it was under the light of Luo Nan's room. She handed over the enormous suitcase in her hands without the slightest trace of politeness. Help! Just by looking at the size of the suitcase, Luonan felt that his next cramp wasn't too far away. But he didn't say anything. He silently received the suitcase and then, under the guidance of the figure, he moved the suitcase downstairs as quietly as possible. Emoya got rid of the biggest burden and only carried a guitar case. She recovered her usual free and easy handsomeness. She lightly brushed away the messy hair on her forehead and didn't forget to issue orders. Be gentle. Don't turn on the lights when you're downstairs. They moved the suitcase to the living room with great difficulty and refused the AI housekeeper's suggestion to turn on the lights. The two cousins sat on the sofa, panting. Emoya was Luonan's older cousin. She had an explosive figure, but she was used to wearing gender-neutral clothing. She was fortunate enough to inherit her father's handsome appearance. She wasn't like her mother, who had an average appearance. She had undergone a genetic mutation, growing to a height of 1.8 meters. She was currently the tallest person in the family. Right now, she was dressed in cowboy attire. Her legs were crossed, but her top leg was crossed over her knee, forming a smooth and proper large triangle. Her skin-tight jeans wrapped around her, revealing the fine and powerful lines of her body. It was enough to make over 70% of the girls scream and call her handsomeness. They would fall to the ground crying from jealousy. Luonan really was paralyzed on the sofa. Even moving a finger made him feel tired. I've returned the favor? Emoya frowned as she looked at him. You're too weak. You didn't just rely on eating pills to survive this month, right? How could that be? The amount of food I eat in a day is more like what you eat in a month. Then you slept for an entire day. How are you still this weak? I slept at around 10 o'clock yesterday. Yesterday? It was the night before yesterday, okay? You slept like a dead pig in the car. It was me and Mo Peng who painstakingly carried you upstairs. Then I never saw you wake up again. Your biological mother even called a doctor. Luonan raised his hand to look at the date displayed on his wristband, September 30th. He was speechless for a time. Luonan reckoned that it was due to his drug withdrawal reaction and the fact that he had been working day and night for the past 2 days. He didn't want to be entangled with this problem. He changed the subject. Why did you run away in the middle of the night? Emoya snorted. Who ran away? I just went to Man City for a roadshow. It took a bit longer, that's all. Man City was a satellite town of Xia City. It was over 400 kilometers away from the city. It was already close to the edge of the city in the wilderness. Luonan frowned when he heard this. How many days? A month. I have to participate in a music festival. My aunt will kill you. She'll be bored by the time I get back. Emoya snorted disdainfully at this sort of threat. Moreover, it wasn't that easy for Luonan to change the topic. Hey, you suddenly came home. Did they give up? Clearly, Emoya was talking about the matter of making medicine. She was the only one in the entire family who roughly knew what Luonan had been up to these past few years. Luonan thought for a bit and laughed. No, I'm resting in stages. It's good that you know what to do. Emoya stood up and walked over to rub Luonan's head. Excellent. The little fellow is much calmer now. But don't pretend anymore. The car is here to pick me up. Get up and move the luggage for the future heavenly queen. Luonan groaned, but in the end he couldn't resist Emoya's forcefulness. He lifted the luggage once more and moved it outside like a thief. He walked out the front door of the house and saw a jet-black old-fashioned van parked outside the courtyard. There were also people waving. Though the sky was dark, Luonan was able to confirm that they were members of Emoya's band. This group of people? With great difficulty, Luonan stuffed the enormous luggage into the van that was already filled with musical instruments and people. Emoya could probably only sit on her own luggage. But Emoya didn't mind this at all. She gave Luonan a hug very straightforwardly. Do your best, bro. You can do it. Do your best too. Great heavenly queen. The old-fashioned van's lights turned on and it gradually drove out of the community. Luonan sent Moya off with his gaze, continuing to work hard for her dream. Chapter 83. Luonan had become a porter. His back was sore and his limbs were weak. His cramped calf showed signs of relapse. Under these circumstances he was too lazy to even go up to the second floor. He walked to the living room and collapsed on the sofa. He didn't want to move at all. His body was half crippled, but his heart was inexplicably happy. He chuckled as he lay on the sofa. Luonan also saw himself when he saw Emoya like this. It sounded a bit painful, but to have a dream and to be on the path of pursuing it was something worth cherishing. Moya's dream was to create a world-class band and to become the fully deserving lead singer of the Queen of Heaven. Up until now, her band had already gained a bit of fame in Xia City. They had also held 2 small-scale concerts and had begun to attract the attention of music companies. Perhaps she was still far from her ultimate goal, but when she sat in that crowded little box of goods and drove towards the music festival in Mantown, she was advancing on the road towards her dream of becoming a heavenly queen. Luonan had once been very envious of Moya. They were both chasing after their dreams, but he spent 5 years of time without seeing any substantial progress. Luonan's dream was to let his grandfather's formatting theory defeat Yen Hong, that shameless distorter and plagiarist. He wanted it to be accepted by the world, become a prominent study, and restore the honor it deserved. This wasn't easy. Yen Hong had already fallen, but Quantum Corporation, one of the top 3 companies in the world by market value, possessed the results. They used this foundation to develop the Deep Blue platform, created the burners, and changed the entire world. This supergiant was a nearly insurmountable obstacle that lay across the road ahead. If Luonan wanted to break through it head-on, he would need to become the apex scholar, possess the apex academic status, and have the support of the corresponding capital power. He would need to continuously produce superior results. With his age and accumulation, was this a goal that could be achieved within a few decades? Plus, Luonan wasn't a gifted researcher. He had stumbled with even the most basic replication experiments in the past 5 years. His accumulation of theory was pitifully small. He used himself as a guinea pig. It looked very decisive, but so what if he succeeded? At most, he would be a large lone piece of evidence that wouldn't be recognized. At most, some organizations would be interested in him, mulling over slicing him up for research. Luonan knew of insurmountable obstacles, but he rarely thought about them. Thinking too much would cause him to collapse. At that time, he felt like he was wandering at the intersection of a highway. Staring at the traffic, he felt envious, but he couldn't blend in at all. Moya and the others still had a container truck, but what he had was just a small body sculpted from medicine. He didn't even have the qualifications to go on the road. But now, the situation had taken a miraculous turn. Luonan's consciousness focused on his left ear. There was a small and exquisite electronic device stuck to his ear canal. The hexa-ear. This little thing from the Wilderness Explorers Association had a miraculous function, but only those with a certain level of strength could activate it. Moreover, depending on one's strength, the level of the function would be different. Luonan needed to activate the heavily chained crow the moment he first came into contact with it. Only then was he able to realize the functions on the computer level. But after 30 hours of sleep, his body and mind had inexplicably adapted to the relevant abilities. At this moment, he only needed to slightly concentrate his mind, and he had already triggered the function of the hexa-ear and successfully connected to the psychic wave network. The interface of his retina opened, and he entered the homepage that seemed to be in the wilderness. Luonan wasn't unfamiliar with these kinds of changes. Back when he constructed the container format, he obtained the 2 abilities of Glutton King and Hypnotist. At first, he needed a high degree of concentration to be able to activate them. But not long after, the activation of these 2 abilities became natural. He didn't need to make any deliberate movements at all. They completely merged into his flesh and blood genes. Yes, it seemed that he had transformed his active skills into passive skills. He carried a halo with him, and he practically didn't need to consume any mana. Of course, concentration and energy were still indispensable in order to activate the deeper applications. This point was quite interesting, but it wasn't the main focus of Luonan's attention right now. He immediately received a notification when he logged onto the Society's homepage. Among them were messages from He Yuan and Zhang Yingying. There were also 2 emails from the Society's channels. Zhang Yingying's message looked like it was purely to chat with him. She stopped after discovering that he hadn't come online all this time. He Yuan told him to reply as soon as he got online. She reminded him to receive the briefing from the Society's channels. Inside was an evaluation of the operation at the Limestone Water Village pub on the night of the 28th. Luonan looked at the time. It was the middle of the night. How could he disturb someone's sweet dreams at this time? He wasn't in a hurry to contact He Yuan. Instead, he first checked the 2 emails from the Society. One of them was an official confirmation letter welcoming him into the professional society. The other was the briefing that He Yuan had brought up. He first opened the confirmation letter. There were stylized words inside. It was an expression of welcome for Luonan to join the Wilderness Explorers Society. The contents were probably the same for every new member of the society. The only difference was the basic personal information feedback forms submitted at the time of registration. Some items required the society to confirm and adjust them. After adjusting, the form would be sent back to the new member for further confirmation. Luonan was disinclined to pay attention to the other items. He just stared at the ability source section. Right now it displayed, System Flow. Luonan subconsciously shook his arm. But then he discovered that there was a special asterisk marking behind this item. When he shifted his consciousness over, a piece of information appeared. This item is currently in doubt. It is recommended that the new member contact the Society's Cultivation Department to undergo the relevant cultivation system evaluation and registration work. If the conditions are met, the new member can obtain the qualifications to teach. Luonan raised his eyebrows. The word "in doubt" made him a bit unhappy. But he had to admit that compared to the difficult circumstances of the past 5 years, the current I'm on my way. This was an organization that borrowed the name of the Wilderness Explorers Society. In reality, it was an ability user professional society. It was just like its core. What it valued was ability and effectiveness. Just like Luonan's identity as a psychic and the corresponding treatment. As long as he used irrefutable facts to prove his worth, he would naturally become the core of the society's tactics. He would also easily erase the doubts of those arrogant and unruly fellows. After all, in the domain of ability users, the strong and the weak, the high and the low were all placed on the surface. They were direct and straightforward. Academics? Status? Capital? At least Luonan had yet to see the influence of these factors up until now. And these were the most difficult obstacles for him to overcome. In this way he just needed to use reality to prove himself. Chapter 84. Luonan used the psychic wave network to search for information related to the evaluation of the cultivation system. He saw the association's definition of a cultivation system. It was a complete and operational cultivation sequence from beginner to advanced. It ensured that a certain number of ordinary people could pass through this cultivation sequence to become an awakened, or even an ability user of a higher level. Luonan's focus was on the awakened. It seemed that the most basic condition to confirm a system was that someone could pass through the system to become an awakened. Then he was still a bit lacking. And frankly speaking, he didn't have a particularly clear train of thought on how to become an awakened. From this point of view, it was no wonder that Zhang Yingying was so disdainful of his insistence on the system-type judgment. Of course, Luonan didn't believe that this was a flaw in his grandfather's theory. The theory he grasped, including the related methods, were all obtained from a notebook. His grandfather had made thousands of similar notebooks throughout his life. Moreover, there were even more important research results that were stored in the Wilderness Laboratory. The Wilderness Laboratory changed owners during the time of the lawsuit. Most of the relevant notes were lost. The book that Luonan grasped was not worth mentioning in the face of the huge amount of research data. But the reason why Yen Hong was able to grasp the relevant theory and produce results so quickly was because he had obtained a considerable portion of the important data. As for why Yen Hong was able to obtain the data, Luonan knew that it was because of his own father, that coward. During the most critical stage of his grandfather's lawsuit, that coward took out his grandfather's research results without authorization. He reached a sort of settlement with Yen Hong and the team behind him, exchanging for a light sentence for his grandfather and successfully getting rid of the lawsuit on his own body. But in reality, his grandfather's schizophrenia was already extremely serious. It was impossible for the court to make a particularly harsh sentence. In the end, that coward was only trying to get rid of his own crime. This was a betrayal. Luonan firmly believed. Not only did he betray his grandfather, he betrayed his mother who had always supported their research and died because of it. Luonan's heart felt stuffy every time he thought of this. He had such a great grandfather, such a great mother, but at the same time he was the son of a coward and a traitor. Luonan took a deep breath. His previous good mood was completely destroyed by the sudden memories. He tried to look at some more information about the society, but he was unable to calm his mind. Seeing that it was still early, Luonan decided to go out and train. Speaking of which, it had been 2 days since he had completed a marathon. He also had to verify how much the withdrawal reaction affected his body. Luonan stood up and was just about to change his clothes when a new message suddenly came from the psychic wave network. It was a direct call. Mr. Luo? Sister he? Luonan looked at his watch. It was just past 3 in the morning. It seemed that He Yuan was also a person who didn't sleep much. You didn't come online the day before. You seem to have entered a deep sleep state? I slept for 30 hours. Luonan was a bit embarrassed. Yuan said, psychics consume a lot of energy. Sleeping for a long time is the most common way to recover. Time isn't a problem, but whether or not one's energy is restored is the most important thing. Yes, I'm in good spirits now. Other than withdrawal symptoms, Sister He, you wake up so early every day. Are you still awake? Burners only need about 2 hours of quiet rest every day. I usually choose to rest at midnight. The two of them chatted for a bit before He Yuan took the initiative to cut to the chase. I noticed that you just received a message. Did you see the briefing? I saw it. Luonan was embarrassed to say that he hadn't seen it yet. He hurriedly opened the briefing. Luckily, the contents weren't too complicated. He could see that He Yuan's writing style was always serious and straightforward. She bluntly mentioned the failure of the operation this time. She criticized the society's intelligence gathering, the cooperative tactics of the participants, and so on. She didn't hide anything because it was an official document for the society. He Yuan had already mentioned a lot of the contents during the operation on the 28th. Luonan picked the more unfamiliar contents to read. He read 10 lines at a glance and more or less understood the relevant contents. He Yuan's voice continued to transmit over. The society has already approved of this briefing and has issued an evaluation for the participants of the operation. Mr. Luo, you are the only B-. According to the relevant provisions of the society, you will receive a certain amount of honor points. Luonan rushed to look at the society's evaluation at the very bottom of the briefing. The contents regarding him were, a new member of the society. He used a keen and calm attitude to complete his debut. He made a human-faced arachnid unable to hide and displayed his role as a cornerstone. If he had been a commander and not a bait, his performance would have been even more perfect. There was a +4 symbol below the evaluation. This meant that his honor points had increased by 4 points. As for the others, He Yuan had the highest score of 3 points. She had obtained a C+ evaluation. It could be considered that she did not fail. Her merits and demerits offset each other. The rest had a string of ones. There were even zeros. The unlucky Black Wolf was one of them. The other was Black Beetle, who had left the team midway. Looked pretty good, He Yuan reminded him at this time. Honor points are very useful within the society. I hope that you can use them carefully. Sister He, do you have any suggestions? Luonan had a lot of confidence in He Yuan's abilities right now. He directly asked her for guidance. He Yuan said, I've just entered the society. Moreover, the path of a burner is different from yours. I recommend that you understand the society a bit more before making your choice. AB evaluation and 4 points are already quite impressive for a newcomer. You must display your greatest value. Luonan naturally received the advice. And the B- evaluation made Luonan think of He Yuan's evaluation that night. She also gave Luonan a B evaluation on the mental plane. But she only gave him an F on the fleshly body plane. This seemed to be an important obstacle for Luonan to become an awakened. Luonan couldn't help but ask, what should I do if I want to temper my body and achieve a balance between my mind and body? Do I become an awakened when my fleshly body and mind achieve a balance? I'm still unable to give you too good a suggestion on this point. After all, the military's burners started with alterations. However, I've heard that the society has a training method specifically provided for members of the mentally enhanced. He Yuan was extremely patient. She answered every question. Mr. Luo needs to be clear on this concept. Since it's called awakening, the key is certainly a change in one's understanding. Whether it's training the fleshly body or cultivating the mind, they are just supplementary methods. They help the fleshly body and the mind to truly experience and sense this world. They help to better explain one's strength. The society has a sort of awakening ceremony. It has a similar function. Chapter 85. He Yuan's reply was filled with her straightforward and practical style. Too many people wouldn't like it, but Luonan could accept it. Achieving a balance between the fleshly body and the mental, pure and practical goals made it easier to concentrate. But He Yuan sent another message right after. It was a form with the words Hexayear Emergency Function Training Plan written on it. Hexayear? Luonan was stupefied for a moment before he remembered that He Yuan had mentioned this line that night. Now even the plan was laid out? There's no need. It wasn't just that he was afraid of trouble. After 30 hours of sleep, his adaptability to his new ability gave Luonan quite a bit of confidence. He felt that even if he didn't use the heavily chained crow, maintaining a 24-hour connection shouldn't be a problem. He Yuan didn't give in easily. Mr. Luo, the use of the hexear isn't just common sense. It is also a skill. Even when you reach the awakened level, you still need to practice it frequently. Especially right now, the threat of the human-faced arachnid is far from being eliminated. You need to maintain a close connection and not give it an opportunity to take advantage. Luonan grunted and finally thought of the human-faced arachnid. He seized the opportunity to change topics. Oh right. Is there any news on the human-faced arachnid? How's the situation with the encirclement and suppression? Not too good. He Yuan's attention was drawn away, but he could hear the seriousness in her voice. Up until now, the society, the military, and Quantum Corporation have handled a total of 11 related incidents. 4 cases have been resolved and 7 cases have failed. In addition, there are still 3 cases that haven't been determined to be the work of the human-faced arachnid. Out of the 14 incidents, 5 people died, 1 was seriously injured, and 67 people suffered serious mental trauma. This was simply a complete rout. Luonan wanted to cover his forehead when he heard this. Before he joined the society, he had a bit of reverence towards this organization hidden in the dark side of the human world. But now it seemed that they were in dire straits. How could this young man who harbored dreams of joining endure? He Yuan seemed to sense Luonan's thoughts. She spoke softly. When the Darksider life forms first appeared, the government, the military, and the ability user society were in a much more difficult situation than they are now. Later, they paid a considerable price and developed a series of tactics to barely control the situation. The current situation is different. The Darksider life forms invading the metropolis is a problem that we have been trying our best to avoid. But this time, the situation had gone out of control, and their efforts over the past 2 years had been ruined. It will definitely take some time to regain control. Luonan blurted out, "Then how will Quantum Corporation be handled?" "Nanan, what are you talking about?" His aunt's voice suddenly rang out. Then the living room lights turned on, illuminating Luonan's silhouette on the sofa. At the top of the stairs, Madame Luo Shuqing frowned and stared at him in her pajamas. "I made a mistake." Luonan's application of the hexear was indeed lacking in tempering. It was clearly an application on the mental plane, but he forgot himself for a moment and simply vomited. However, he did not know if there was a similar problem in front of him. He Yuan also noticed the surprise on his end and took the initiative to end the call. "Once you confirm the training schedule, send it to me." Luonan didn't have the face to refuse at this time. He could only acquiesce. Of course, the most important thing now was to deal with his aunt's questions. He stood up, but he forgot about his body and almost sprained his waist again. He took a deep breath and tried to think of an excuse. "I just woke up and a classmate was online, so we chatted. I really slept for a long time." Madame Luo Shuqing walked over, her brows still furrowed. "Did you not rest well over at Blue Bay?" "Nope, it was pretty good." Luonan's eyes didn't even blink when he said this sort of lie. His usual dullness was a very good cover. However, Madame Luo Shuqing was far too familiar with him. "You don't sleep even after midnight. You live by yourself. How can you handle it?" Luonan knew that he couldn't continue being entangled. He lowered his head to look for his shoes. "It's too early. You should go sleep a bit more." "I can't sleep anymore. I might as well go exercise." "Who goes for a 3 o'clock run?" Madame Luo Shuqing coldly stabbed at him. She then sat on the sofa and patted the spot next to her. "I'm already this old. I can't sleep anymore. Come, accompany me for a chat." Come on. I wanted to ask you. Do you have any fixed social circles at school? Your friend from that day was called Shuele, right? He looks like a kind and honest person." Luonan knew that he could no longer escape. He could only sigh to himself and obediently return to endure a new round of torture. A full 2 hours passed and Luonan chatted with his aunt from 3 to 5. Finally, Luonan obtained permission to go for a morning jog. It was as if he had been granted amnesty. He used the fastest speed to change into his clothes and shoes, and he left the house without looking back. It wasn't that he wasn't filial. It was just that as time passed, there was a risk that Emoya would be exposed for leaving home in the middle of the night. Usually, Emoya would wake up to practice her voice at this time. It was better to get away from this troublesome place. Luonan calculated the time until it was almost 8 o'clock. He reckoned that the first round of the battle between mother and daughter had already ended. Only then did he turn around and return home. He hadn't had much time to train in the outside world for 3 hours. His body was in a terrible state due to the withdrawal symptoms, and he couldn't withstand too much energy consumption. Luo Nan found a park to properly familiarize himself with the prison format, the heavily chained crow, the wraith sign, and various other elements. He wanted to see what sort of changes would occur to his body after the adaptation period. He didn't gain anything in the past 3 hours, but when he returned home, he was greeted with his aunt's anger as expected. Luo Nan, look at what you've done. As an accomplice, it was impossible to hide this sort of thing. The AI system would faithfully provide all of the surveillance footage for his aunt to choose and appraise. Luo Nan knew that he didn't need to explain anything at this time. He just needed to lower his head and take the scolding. In any case, it would be mealtime soon. Dinner's ready. Cool down. First fill your stomach. Over at the dining room, his uncle Mo Haihang sat down first. He scooped a bowl of porridge and side dishes for himself. He drank it unhurriedly, tasted a few mouthfuls and nodded. Today's millet is quite sticky. Next time I'll buy this one, Mo Haihang. His aunt's firepower shifted in an instant. However, his uncle remained calm and collected. Since you know where she is and where she's going, how could you lose her? Just endure it for now. You can scold her when you get back. If it were anyone else, such an exaggerated statement might just be the fuse for a family war. However, his uncle was one of the few people who had the qualifications to say such things. As a senior technical member of the SEA, Mo Haihang had already worked in this authority department known as the Social Credit Administration for nearly 20 years. In this modern society where credit had completely replaced the function of currency, the SEA was the witness and administrator of all credit. It was also responsible for auditing the corresponding granting of authority. It could be said to be the hottest authority department. Chapter 86. Luo Shuqing didn't say much about her husband's stubbornness. She just sneered, "Is this something that can't be thrown away? Your arrogant and willful daughter." In any case, Luo Nan was able to temporarily leave the battlefield thanks to his uncle's diversion of fire. He went upstairs to change his clothes and wash up. Who knew that there would be many things to do this morning? He had just finished showering and changed his clothes when a message came from the Hexier. It was from an unfamiliar number. Luo Nan thought for a bit and chose to answer. He was just about to ask when the other side spoke, "Fuck you." Luo Nan was stunned for a moment. Which psycho? The society had this kind of person? Then the voice on the other side clearly lost control and shouted, "Go hide in that mechanical woman's crotch. I'll show you guys sooner or later." This person sounded like he was drunk. His words weren't very clear and they were all filled with profanities. A long string of curses was spilled in less than half a minute. Luo Nan finally reacted at this time. Mechanical woman? Was this referring to He Yuan? Then it was related to the operation on the 28th. He quickly made a guess when he saw the other side's vile attitude. He looked at the avatar and sure enough, Black Beetle? Wasn't this fellow the one who couldn't take He Yuan's criticism that night and left the team halfway? He and the unlucky Black Wolf were given 0 points in the society's evaluation report. Now it seemed that this person's personality was vile enough. There really were all sorts of people in the society. Even Buddha would get angry after being showered in the face with profanities, let alone Luo Nan. He frowned and replied, "A blatant threat with an intense attitude. Can I assume that you're being controlled by the human-faced arachnid?" The other side was suddenly stifled by this accusation. Then he gritted his teeth and said, "Kid, don't think that being a psychic is amazing. Let's play slowly in the future." Luo Nan responded coldly, "I'll keep you company anytime." The two sides hung up and Luo Nan discovered that he had spat out a mouthful of saliva due to his impulsiveness. He patted his cheeks lightly and stuck his head out from the staircase. It was very quiet downstairs. The husband and wife were still looking at each other. It seemed that his aunt's anger had yet to dissipate. He let out a breath of relief and walked down the stairs. Uncle and aunt turned their faces in unison when they saw Luo Nan come down. Uncle indicated for Luo Nan to sit down. "Come eat. The millet porridge is nice to drink while it's hot." Mo Haihang had been working in the government for many years. Although he was not tall, he had a serious expression and was usually taciturn. He did not look friendly. But in fact at home he was the standard cook. As long as they were at home, he would take care of all 3 meals from morning till night. It wasn't that he was henpecked or anything like that. It was just that his aunt's culinary skills had been the same for decades. He really didn't dare to compliment her. As for her two children, Moya had perfectly inherited her aunt's powerful talent and unparalleled culinary skills. Although she dared to cook, no one dared to eat it. There was also Mo Peng, Luonan's older cousin of the same age. It wasn't even 10 o'clock on a weekend morning. How was it possible for him to get up? The family ate breakfast together and they didn't even bother to call him. It was probably because of Moya's extremely serious behavior of running away from home that the atmosphere at the dining table had been low for a long time. Uncle had seen this kind of situation many times, so he calmly ate his porridge and watched the news. Luonan wasn't in a good mood to talk, so he just kept his head down and ate. His appetite was there. Plain porridge and side dishes were certainly not enough to satisfy him. Uncle had considered this point when he cooked. Beef was paired with nutritional supplements, and he was guaranteed to eat until he was full. It was reasonable to say that this was a very normal breakfast for the Mo family, even though it had been a month since the incident. But Luonan felt a bit strange today. It was because his mental senses were spread out at all times. Even if he lowered his head, he could still see his aunt and uncle exchanging glances. It seemed to be a bit too frequent. Was it like this in the past? Or was his mental state too sensitive today? Seeing that he was more or less done eating, his aunt suddenly opened her mouth. "You Luonan. Nothing going on today, right?" Nothing? Then let's go to Anhai together. Let's go see your grandfather." Luonan was clearly stunned. Then he responded with a resounding voice, "Okay." But he was a bit worried in the blink of an eye. "Grandpa's condition isn't good again?" "No, don't make blind guesses." Aunt tapped her chin. "Go. You clean up today." Luonan had no objections. Anhai Medical Center was a very famous sanatorium for mental illnesses in Xia City. It was located in the outskirts of Xia City, nearly 200 kilometers away from the main city district. It was approximately an hour's drive. Every time the family went on an outing, the front passenger seat was a golden treasure trove. No one wanted to receive his aunt's advice in the rear compartment. This time Luonan seized the seat before the sleepy Mo Peng could. He let out a sigh of relief when he got in the car. An hour's drive could be said to be long, but it could be said to be short. From Mo Peng's perspective, it was clearly very long. But Luonan had a lot of things to do to pass the time. He opened his portable notebook and looked at the interface of the flexible e-ink screen. Right now, the newly appeared visualization icon was still in the download state. Over 30 hours had passed and the progress had only reached 2%. Well, it was all thanks to this too. Otherwise he would have thought that it was stuck. Luonan was unable to estimate just how much information he had dug out from the body of the human-faced arachnid. Or perhaps the external neuron's analysis speed was limited after it left the laboratory's abundant energy. Luonan looked at the battery capacity of the flexible e-ink screen. There was still around half of it left. This was already an extraordinary consumption, but it was nothing compared to the independent power station of Gear's laboratory. He could give it a try when he got to school tomorrow. Luonan opened the drawing software and directly entered the second layer interface. A 5-layer structure of students, staff, technicians, clergymen, and politicians appeared. But then he frowned. Was it a misconception? Did he feel that the interface had become dirty? It was inexplicably a bit dark and it was even a bit trembling. Before he could take a closer look, his uncle in the driver's seat turned his head. "You're researching the societal format diagram? Oh, you switched to a flexible screen." This driver of his was quite idle under the autopilot mode, and his gaze was quite sharp. Luonan grunted, wanting to vaguely brush it off. But Luonan's uncle curled his lips. "In 79, I was forced by a certain someone to start a research project on the Bureau's supercomputer. I built a format diagram model for him, using 30 years of Xia City's authority and credit data. In the end, I was punished and I was reprimanded by your grandfather for trying to fish from a tree. These are all things that happened before my eyes." Luonan knew that the certain someone was referring to his father, Luo Zhongheng. It seemed that Luonan's uncle and his father had a pretty good relationship. These past few years, Luonan had always been trying to correct Luonan's impression of his father. But it was useless to say these things. Luonan would never forgive a coward who used his grandfather's blood, sweat, and tears to exchange for freedom, then disappeared without a trace. He grunted in response, not wanting to say anything. In the back, Mo Peng saw his old man open his mouth and discovered a good opportunity to break free from his mother's low-pressure domain. He slid his seat forward and forcefully inserted himself. Chapter 87. Mo Peng's short and fat body moved forward like a fat groundhog. Luo Shuqing, who was behind him, couldn't bear to look at him and coldly stared at him. If you are ignorant and incompetent, then don't speak without thinking. How am I ignorant and incompetent? Are you saying that my A's in all 7 subjects are just there for you to trample on? Mo Peng had a wronged expression on his face. He clearly wanted to liven up the atmosphere. How did he get such a reputation? It was his father who knew him well. He knew that he couldn't stand the pressure of his menopausal mother, and was just here to join in the fun. He casually explained and brought him into the circle of discussion. Student and staff are just code names. They have their own specific meanings. Are you not interested in them? As long as he could hide from this old lady, he would be interested in anything. Mo Peng was thick-skinned. He chuckled and said, "Isn't there one now? Back then, you chased after me and wanted to instill this thing in me. Now that the seed has sprouted." He snatched the notebook from Luo Nan's hands as he spoke. He saw the flexible e-ink screen interface and was stunned. What effect is this? It looks like I'm soaking in water. Mo Peng's description was extremely apartment. Right now, the second layer of the drawing software's interface seemed to be submerged in muddy river water. The 5-story tower structure that was close to the diagram of Maslow's hierarchy of needs was practically completely submerged in the water. It looked as if there was a layer of dusky membrane separating it from the rest of the cards. The sketches that Luo Nan had created were even more blurry and indistinct. Luo Nan didn't know what was going on, but he had a faint feeling that this sort of scene was related to his own ability. He didn't want to discuss it further, so he took the notebook back and closed it. It's nothing, it's just a screensaver. The effect of this lie was very touching. However, Mo Peng was very clear about Luo Nan's awkward temperament. He knew that Luo Nan didn't want to talk about it, so he didn't ask. He still used the social format diagram as a life-saving straw. Brother Master. Imparting knowledge and dispelling doubts refers to you. Tell me, what do those code names mean? Grass is growing in my heart. Luo Nan glanced at his uncle. Luo Nan was currently adjusting the car's AI function. It seemed that he no longer participated in the conversation between youngsters. On the other hand, his aunt, who was sitting in the back seat, was looking at them quietly with a dazed expression. The atmosphere in the carriage was a little subtle. Luo Nan thought for a bit and spoke in a soft voice. The original intent of establishing this model was to explain the effects of an individual on the social format and the structure of relationships. Social format? Mo Peng was stunned. Fortunately, he was the grandson of the Luo family. Even if he was not interested in formatting theory, he still had some basic concepts. It refers to the structure of society, right? The collective composition and way of existence of human beings that affects individuals and changes nature? Luo Nan gave Mo Peng a thumbs up when he heard this. Though it wasn't that precise, it saved Luo Nan a lot of talking. Every country, tribe, region, and human collective must have their own specific social structure. Through this format, a steady stream of new social individuals would be produced. At the same time, nature would be transformed and new resources would be obtained to provide for the existence and operation of the society. Every social individual will be branded with the social format, and to a certain extent, will produce a counterforce to the social format. Students refer to learners. They can only accept the one-way indoctrination of the social format. They are not considered complete social individuals and are unable to be of any use. Employees refer to workers. They are the basic social individuals. They possess a certain ability to survive independently and maintain the basic operation of the social format. Technicians refer to promoters. Their advantage over employees lies in the fact that they can already optimize the social format and increase the efficiency of the operation of the format. Clergymen refer to the enlightened. They have a relatively complete understanding of the social format and begin to consciously utilize the power of the social format. Politicians refer to the innovators. They are the higher-level enlightened. While utilizing the social format, they also carry out a conscious transformation of the format in an attempt to maximize the benefits. Mo Peng was worthy of being an excellent student with all 7 grades. He immediately spoke when he heard this. It sounds like a certain variant of the theory of hierarchy. Then the question is, what is the basis for dividing these classes and strata? Is there a unified standard? Luo Nan was silent when he heard this. He felt the gaze of his uncle from the side at this time. He raised his head and their gazes met. He revealed a bitter smile. The standard is me. I am the standard. Luo Yuandao picked up a rectangular block of wood in the independent ward of Anhai Sanatorium Center. He gently placed it on the wall that was half the height of a person in front of him. His fingers were trembling. The various diseases of his nervous system had pretty much destroyed his body. His originally tall stature had already collapsed. His entire body was just skin and bones. He was completely emaciated and deformed. He appeared to be incomparably weak. Luo Yuandao wasn't even 80 years old this year. In this day and age he could be considered to have just entered old age. Some people hadn't even retired yet. However, he was already infinitely close to the end of his life. Even though he was still stubbornly standing, he was still constructing his work. Even though his fingers and arms were trembling, when the building blocks fell to their positions, they were all upright and seamless. He was able to obtain this result because he had been controlling it back and forth for nearly half an hour. He was determined not to let go until he obtained the final, perfect result. A smile appeared on his withered and dry face. It was clear that Luo Yuandao was extremely satisfied with the structure in front of him. In fact, it wasn't just in front of him. All around him were short walls made from building blocks. Luo Nan and Mo Peng could only talk to him through the short walls. The high-level nurse next to Luo Yuandao was a very patient middle-aged woman surnamed Hong. She saw that the building blocks had been placed, so she asked him softly from the other side, "Old man, this piece is done. Let's take a break?" Luo Yuandao ignored her. He was in a good mood, so he wasn't stingy in answering his grandson's questions. He grinned like a gigantic laughing skeleton. "I created the theory. Of course it uses me as the standard. It must serve me. Haven't you heard? All things are for me. My heart is the universe. I am the common lord of all things. I am the center of the universe." Mo Peng turned his head away a bit awkwardly. It was really hard for a normal person to endure this stubborn and crazy old man's logic. Right now it was very difficult for him to endure it. His parents, who were always by his side in the past, seemed to have gone to consult about the old man's condition. They weren't here, so he didn't even dare to speak. He felt more and more uncomfortable. However, what made Mo Peng feel even more uncomfortable was that his cousin, who was standing next to him, seemed to be very engrossed. He was even a bit fanatical. "Oh my God!" Luo Yuandao picked up another building block and raised it in front of his eyes. He continued his lecture. "I possess the principles of heaven and earth. I can bestow the roots of all things. Just like this block of wood. It can be square, but it can also be round. Square and round are nothing more than external appearances. I can even change its internal root nature. What's so special about its external appearance? I used it to construct this temple. This is my domain. If I want it to be square, then it will be square. If I want it to be round, then it will be round." The building block fell as he spoke. But this time he was too excited from speaking. He didn't place it in the right place, so it fell all of a sudden. Luo Yuandao reached out his hand to grab it by reflex. His weak body couldn't maintain its balance and he fell straight forward. Chapter 88. Nurse Hong rushed over and helped Luo Nan straighten up the old man. She said over and over, "It's okay. It's okay. There's cushioning equipment to prevent falling." It was unknown whether these words were meant to comfort others or to comfort herself. Luo Nan carefully supported his grandfather's shoulder, not daring to touch his arm. He felt that the old man's arm was as thin as a hemp stick. He could break it with just a bit of force. But Luo Nan felt his chest sink a bit at this time. Luo Yuandao's hemp stick-like arm was pressing against his chest, pushing him away. Luo Nan remembered that his grandfather didn't like other people to have physical contact with him. He didn't dare to resist. He saw that Nurse Hong was already in place, so he took advantage of the situation and retreated, pulling apart the distance. Luo Yuandao laughed at this time. His vocal cords rubbed out a hoarse laugh, revealing a strange feeling of joy. "You may have destroyed my shrine, but you can't stay in my country for long." On the other side, Mo Peng, who was a bit slow in reacting, didn't make it in time to rescue the old man. He finally couldn't help but touch his forehead with his palm to alleviate the awkwardness. Luo Nan didn't care about his grandfather's strange train of thought. He saw that the loose-leaf notebook that had been clamped under his elbow had fallen onto the messy rubble of building blocks. He bent over to pick it up. His fingertips had just touched the cover when he heard a low roar, "My spoils of war!" Luo Nan was stunned for a moment. A shadow swept over him. If he hadn't instinctively leaned back and Mo Peng pulled him, he would have been swept by Luo Yuandao's toes. Nurse Hong controlled the old man's balance in a flurry. Her mouth was constantly comforting him. "Old man, the spoils of war are still here. They're still here. She hurriedly gave Luo Nan and Mo Peng a meaningful glance. The two could only retreat and pull apart the distance when they saw this. Bring it over. Give it to me. Luo Yuandao clearly looked a lot crazier than before, but his spirit was strangely vigorous. He was giving orders to people. Nurse Hong was adjusting the balance device. She couldn't free her hands for a time, so she indicated for Luo Nan to come forward. It's fine. Old man, 1 yard at a time. In other words, he had already reached the stage of lacking logic. Luo Nan took a deep breath and suppressed the sourness in his heart. He walked forward to pick up the notebook. Luo Yuandao reached out to take it. The weight of the thick notebook was a bit too heavy for him. He trembled when he received it with one hand. Special Nurse Hong wanted to help but was rudely rejected. Although his arms were trembling and it looked like he would fall at any moment, he still flipped open the book and scanned through its contents. He knew that Luo Yuandao's current mental state was at a completely incomprehensible level. But at this time, Luo Nan's heart had the apprehension of handing in homework. He stared at the old man wanting to see what the result would be. Bullshit. Bullshit. Luo Yuandao had a face of disdain when faced with the messy lines that Luo Nan had hastily drawn. In a sense, this was the most normal reaction. Luo Nan couldn't say what he was feeling in his heart. But in the next second, Luo Yuandao's movements froze. His gaze stopped on the paper and his eyes seemed to focus. At this moment, he flipped to the page where the prison sketch had been messed up. For a full 5 seconds, Luo Yuandao did not move at all. Luo Nan's heart suddenly skipped a beat. He stared at his grandfather's face, which had already lost its form. Traces of weak flames of hope suddenly ignited within him. He leaned forward a bit, trying to see his grandfather's reaction a bit more clearly. Luo Yuandao cast a sidelong glance when he felt Luo Nan's movements. He suddenly said, "You've grown up." Luo Nan's heart thumped. He couldn't help but think, can he see it? He can understand. Luo Nan couldn't help but move forward again, but a withered arm pressed against his chest once more. Then Luo Nan saw a pair of crazed and ice-cold eyes. "You've come to kill me, grandfather." Luo Nan's heart suddenly clenched, but he was pushed away by Luo Yuandao with great force. Luo Nan staggered and nearly fell down on the messy building blocks under his feet. Luo Yuandao was even more furious when he saw Luo Nan trampling on the building blocks. "My shrine. You're plundering my divine kingdom. My students, my employees, my technicians, my priests, my politicians. What? They're all mine." Luo Nan had just been supported by Mo Peng. He was stupefied on the spot when he heard this. But then he saw Luo Yuandao, who couldn't even stand stably, begin to move crazily. Luo Yuandao raised his leg and dropped it, completely kicking down the remaining 3 relatively intact building blocks. Nurse Hong saw that the situation was far from good. She had already injected a tranquilizer, but she couldn't control it for a while. "Grandfather. Grandfather." Luo Nan and Mo Peng were both frightened and terrified. They didn't know how to react at all. Nurse Hong had already called for a doctor, but it was impossible for a doctor to appear instantly. Luo Yuandao kicked over all of his creations. Then he raised his head to the sky and howled with laughter, "Fire! Fire! Let the flames burn! Burn through the darkness of this cloak. A new god will step on the bones of an old god to ascend the throne. Come, come. Let's see who's the master of the universe." Luo Nan's malevolent and terrifying figure was like a giant hammer. It rumbled and smashed against Luo Nan and Mo Peng's hearts. In the end, the two of them were only 15 or 16-year-old youths. They wanted to help, but they were afraid of causing trouble when faced with this sort of scene. They were at a loss for a time. Finally, the doctor rushed over. Behind him were actually Mo Haihang and Luo Shuqing. And at this time, the two of them didn't know what to say. They just moved out of the ward like puppets, standing stupidly and waiting. At this time, it could be said that every second felt like a year. Actually, it didn't take long. 10 minutes at most. Luo Shuqing walked out of the ward. She faced the two people who were still in a stupefied state and laughed. "It's nothing. Old people are often like this. They just talk a bit more." Luo Shuqing's relaxed attitude made Luo Nan and Mo Peng feel much better. They wanted to ask about the situation in detail, but they didn't know where to start. Luo Shuqing looked at her watch. "It's getting late. It's also time for your grandfather to rest. Let's go eat first. The food here is pretty good." "All right. Your grandfather should be taking a walk outside at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Do you guys want to accompany him?" "Okay." Luo Nan immediately agreed, but then he was a bit worried. If I'm here, will he? Who do you think you are? Luo Shuqing laughed again. Then she let out a breath and looked at Mo Peng. Actually, Mo Peng wasn't quite willing to throw his precious weekend time in the mental hospital, but Luo Nan had made it clear. He could only shut his mouth. At most, he would play a few more rounds of 10 days in the wilderness. Yeah. If he could pull Luo Nan over to fight, he could crush him a few dozen times in a row. That would be even better. Luo Shuqing laughed. Then it's decided. All right. When I was consulting with the doctor just now, he recommended a deep sleep nutrition pod. It can ease the mood and reduce stress. Let's go try it out as a family. We can also finish our afternoon break on the way. Chapter 89. No matter what the two youngsters thought, Luo Shuqing and her husband, the always rational Dr. Mo Haiheng, were all excited about the health pod. After lunch, they brought the two youngsters to a side building of the sanatorium. Though Luo Nan and Mo Peng seemed to yield on the surface, they were planning in private. They would firmly oppose if they really had to fork out the money. They couldn't let the two elders be fooled. The so-called health pod was arranged quite like that. It was an individual room layout, and each room had specialized nursing staff. It didn't look like a nap, but more like a high-standard spa. In this day and age, as long as human resources were involved, a high price could be casually called out. Mo Peng's eyes lit up when he saw the sweet smile on the young nurse's face. He had long forgotten about the fooling problem. He was practically impatient to go in and experience it. Luo Shuqing had already booked 4 rooms in a row. They each chose one and went in. Luo Nan and Mo Peng were next to each other. Luo Nan's sensing range just so happened to cover the neighboring room. He heard Mo Peng ask shyly, "Do you want to take off your clothes?" Luo Nan was too lazy to pay attention to the other side. Right now in his room, the beautiful nurse was explaining the various benefits and basic operations of the health pod to him as part of the service. Luo Nan treated this as an advertisement and forgot about it. He was more interested in the health pod itself. Perhaps it was due to the imprint left behind by his special birth experiences, but Luo Nan had a special feeling towards health pods and health pods. It wasn't a feeling of liking or loathing. It was a kind of trance from deep memories. When a health pod was placed in front of him, it was like a hypnotist setting up a suggestion. It would push him into the deep and chaotic deep memory zone. The feeling was very complicated and chaotic, but he didn't hate it. Really? Luo Nan followed the nurse's instructions and entered the pod. The lid closed and soft and soothing music sounded. It was still like the faint scent of flowers, faintly discernible. Everything proceeded according to the normal procedure. The lid made of special materials gradually turned from transparent to blurry, slowly cutting off the light from the outside world. Luo Nan closed his eyes, thinking that an afternoon nap like this wasn't bad. But he suddenly opened his eyes 7 or 8 seconds later. Something's wrong. The smell inside isn't right. Luo Nan reflexively went to press the open button inside the cabin. A muffled sound was heard at this time. Someone was lightly tapping the health pod's panel. The hatch cover turned from fuzzy to transparent once more. But Luo Nan reacted quickly, and the hatch cover flipped up. The person outside let out a cry, nearly having his arm pinched. Luo Nan suddenly sat up. On the mental plane, the heavily chained crow buzzed as if it wanted to come out. This was where his strongest power lay. However, at this moment he came face to face with the person outside the cabin. The beautiful nurse had already disappeared. At this time, standing outside the cabin was a young doctor wearing a white coat and glasses. He looked quite elegant. If he spoke less, perhaps he would give people a better impression. Are kids nowadays all so impatient? The young doctor rotated his arms symbolically and coughed once. He adopted a very proper and serious attitude. "Student Luo Nan. I am your attending doctor Jianghu Liang." Luo Nan stared coldly at him at first, but gradually the image of this young doctor, who was pretending to be serious, overlapped with a certain person in his memories. It made Luo Nan a bit uncertain. It wasn't until the doctor finished his self-introduction and Luo Nan saw the nameplate on his chest that Luo Nan made a probing judgment. "You are? Bro Octopus?" Cough Zhang Yuliang. Yuliang as in Yu Liang. The more the young doctor spoke, the more certain Luo Nan was. He let out a breath and relaxed, but he couldn't help but want to laugh. On the night of the 28th, it was this young aptitude user who was wearing a funny t-shirt with a cartoon octopus. While he was laughing and joking, he showed his exquisite ability to make hallucinogens and turn dozens of people in the room into stupid pigs with confused minds. And now he was wearing a classic white coat and a pair of gold-rimmed glasses. It was as if he was 10 years older in an instant. At first glance, he looked like a highly educated professional doctor. But the hip-hop flavor that was carved into his bones, along with the deliberate movement of his eyebrows, broke through the false shell in the blink of an eye. Luonan was most familiar with this side of him. Hey, hello bro Octopus. Luonan was still thinking about Octopus's superb drug concoction methods. As a semi-professional, Luonan quite admired Octopus. In addition, an outstanding master of hallucinogens was working as a doctor in a mental sanatorium. It seemed quite fitting. I was supposed to have a leisurely weekend shift, but it was ruined by a certain someone. I don't feel good at all right now. Octopus ignored Luonan's good intentions. He flipped the flexible screen in his hand and found the relevant information. He spoke in cadence. Schizophrenia. Severe mental illness. It occurs in 1% of the world's population. It is related to hereditary factors. People with a history of schizophrenia in their family will have a higher chance of contracting the illness by several times. The examinee's grandfather was a patient with severe schizophrenia. 4 years ago, the examinee himself was admitted to the hospital for treatment due to the dysfunction of his neurotransmitter system, causing his heart and lungs to fail. He was even given a notice of critical illness. The hospital's diagnosis at the time was that if the illness were to progress further, the possibility of the illness being hereditary and developing could not be ruled out. Improper electrical stimulation, drug stimulation, and sudden emotional stimulation could all lead to the illness. TSK Mr. Psychic. I really didn't know that you were this kind of person. Luonan finally came to a realization at this time. Bro Octopus, my aunt and the others? Mrs. Luo Shuqing claimed that a certain someone was talking to himself several times this morning. Moreover, he said things like, how will XX company be handled? I'll accompany you anytime, and other such offensive and cautionary words. Moreover, these kinds of words have no obvious connection to the environment of their daily lives. So, Mrs. Luo Shuqing suspects that this is the early symptoms of schizophrenia. She's also worried about a certain someone's psychological resistance, so she used this method to do an examination. It's a pity that our sanatorium's high-end health pod was used as an anesthetic. Luonan didn't know what to say for a time, but he soon came to a realization. My aunt and the others definitely wouldn't have been able to think of this convoluted idea. Octopus spread his hands. Isn't it the duty of a qualified doctor to solve the problems of patients and their families? Moreover, this health pod can perform brain imaging. It's very convenient. He looked at his watch. Your family's elders are about to arrive. Are you going to explain things to them, or are you going to obediently lie down and put on a show? Luonan laughed bitterly. He immediately lay down and closed his eyes. A smart choice. Oh right, I won't violate the taboo of the society and scan your body structure. I'll just use a fake to deal with it. I'll have to trouble Bro Octopus. The lid of the pod closed up once more, isolating the outside world's light. But in reality, Luonan was still able to sense the outside world's environment. He was able to see his aunt and uncle push open the door and walk in. From head to toe, their expressions were filled with seriousness, caution, and worry. Chapter 90. Luonan maintained his absent-minded state all the way until Octopus opened the health pod. It's not easy to fool them. They are half experts in this field. Octopus took off his decorative glasses and fanned himself with the flexible screen to express his feelings of hardship. It's over for the time being. They only said that the symptoms were not obvious at the moment and did not dare to deny it completely. Otherwise, they would definitely take him to another hospital. Alright, I admit that it's not safe even now. Be prepared. That's right. Luonan was a bit at a loss. How could he prepare for this? In the days to come, he would be treated as a schizophrenic by his aunt and uncle? Octopus saw Luonan's depressed mood and chuckled, don't get tangled up. In a certain sense they weren't wrong. From a certain perspective, every ability user has schizophrenia. Luonan raised his head in shock. That's not what I said, it's President Ouyang's wise opinion. Ouyang Chen, do you know President Ouyang? Yes, the one who invented the Hexier. Yes, that's him. He was the one and only registered extraordinaire in the Xia City Society. He started with the mental enhancement and he was the absolute authority in this field. You're also a spiritually enhanced type. You can learn from him later. Octopus clearly admired President Ouyang very much. He gave Luonan an introduction before saying, President Ouyang once said that as an ability user, we often need a set of logic in the normal world and another set of logic in the inner world. Moreover, every awakened should also have their own set of logic. The logic of the normal world helps you avoid making a joke out of your basic daily life. It allows you to act according to the rules of law and morals. It also teaches you simple principles of socializing and working, allowing you to become a normal human being. Luonan went, oh. He discovered that this definition was very similar to the social format. Of course, any sociological theory would have similar concepts. As for the inner world logic, it's the logic of a small circle of ability users. Things like revering strength, focusing on one's own strength, and using one's abilities to differentiate between superior and inferior classes. Originally it was very simple. He just had to fool around in his own circle like the MMA association. But the problem is that the inner world has a strong influence on the normal world. This causes the logic of the inner world to distort the logic of the real world. Well, isn't it like schizophrenia? Or should I say the epitome of all mental illness? Luonan nodded, it's a bit similar. Of course they look alike. If there is a difference, it is that psychopaths cannot use their logic to affect reality. Their logic is illusory, fragile, and absurd. But we can, and our logic has become the rule that a considerable number of people must recognize. Octopus made a horizontal gesture. If we were to apply this principle to self-logic, remember President Ouyang suggested that every awakened should have a set of self-logic. Luonan inexplicably sucked in a breath. He felt a certain feeling of déjà vu. It was like a gradually rising tide, flooding his chest, his nose, and his head. Octopus continued, the so-called self-logic is a set of self-consistent theories that ability users use to explain their own abilities. As long as you can form a complete logical chain from beginning to end, and can actually verify it, then no matter how ridiculous it is, it's possible. Just like those madmen in the secret orders. Their actions are absurd, but it doesn't affect their strength. It's because they have an internal logic and use this logic to successfully distort the external world. We can also give an example. Your grandfather, Mr. Luo Yuandao, is that okay? Luonan was silent. Octopus continued to speak like this, I've seen your grandfather's symptoms. Disregarding the pathological changes in his nervous system, he is the typical manifestation of self-logic, being unable to defeat external logic. If he really does possess an extremely powerful strength that can affect the entire universe, then he is correct. It is appropriate to say that he is the center of the universe, the truth of the world. But in reality, it is impossible to possess this level of strength. Therefore, us ability users cannot fall into delusions. We must abide by reality. We must ponder and revise our internal logic according to our true level of strength. This is so that our logic can be perfectly realized in the external world. Octopus was a bit tired from speaking so much in a single breath. He spread his hands and concluded, from this point of view, every ability user is a psychopath who attempts to use self-logic to distort objective reality. In addition to the dual influence of the logic of the normal world and the logic of the inner world, it is hard for us to avoid being tired. Therefore, some people want to push down the wall, allowing normal people to adapt to the existence of ability users, allowing ability users to dominate this world. There are also people who completely ignore it, don't care, and don't come into contact with it. Even more extreme are those who don't recognize the logic of the normal world. They don't treat non-ability users as people. There are also those who kill. Oh, it's quite unfortunate that you entered this enormous mental hospital at such a young age. You can only suffer a bit more. If you must make a suggestion, it would be better for you to rely on the logic of the inner world. This can be considered a type of compromise. After all, you aren't an awakened yet. You have developed self-logic early on. Perhaps you really will become crazy. And if you follow the logic of the normal world, you will be far too clumsy. Therefore, participate in a few more society activities. Get to know a few more friends. Form your own circle. You will slowly adapt. This can be considered a piece of advice from Senior. Luonan's brain was stuffed with a lump of logic. His brain was more or less muddled. But he could see that Brother Octopus was a warm-hearted person. These words were admittedly a bit mysterious, but they were very helpful to him. Brother Octopus really did want to enlighten him, so Luonan immediately expressed his thanks. Octopus chuckled and waved his hand. No need to be polite. It's quite hard to get a chance to curry favor with a psychic. Just don't let me charge too far to the front when we move in the future. I'm just a pharmacist. I'm not cut out to charge and break through enemy lines. Of course this was just a joke. But Luonan suddenly thought of a matter that had been hanging in his mind since a long time ago when he heard Octopus mention a pharmacist. He muttered to himself for a moment and then said, Brother Octopus has done a lot of research in compounding psychotropic drugs? Then do you accept orders? Of course I accept. It's fine as long as you explain the use clearly. Octopus responded smoothly, but then he was startled. He changed his expression and sized up Luonan up from head to toe. He even rubbed his chin and muttered to himself for a while before speaking once more. Especially for a minor like you. You need to explain even more clearly. Don't tell me you have some sort of bad habit? Luonan didn't respond directly. He focused slightly and transmitted a molecular formula to Octopus through the hexa ear. I want to compound this drug. Can I? Chapter 91. Octopus stared blankly for a while. His eyes focused and looked at Luonan. Actually, if you want to kill someone, you don't need this kind of complicated structure. You just need to cut out a random portion from here. The dosage is enough and the results will be absolutely fantastic. Luckily, Luonan didn't need to explain. Octopus's eyes emptied once more and he sank back into his professional world. Luonan clenched his fist in secret when he saw Octopus's reaction. There's a way. At least at this moment, it wasn't just the concoction of the drug. The principles and effects of the drug were worth serious research by professionals. This was undoubtedly the best news for Luonan. He directly shared the molecular formula with Octopus. Didn't he want to obtain a similar result? A notification sound came from the nourishment chamber at this time. It was time for the preset nap time. Luonan didn't want to disturb Octopus's train of thought, but he thought that his uncle and aunt would be coming soon. He couldn't help but urge, Bro Octopus, give me a clear answer. Can you do it or not? If you can, I'll give you the dosage and everything else. Give me the ones in front. Octopus's words drifted. Octopus stared at him once more. His eyes didn't even blink. His face swelled with a layer of blood red. This definitely isn't the original version, right? Any normal person would be toyed to death with so many targeted neurons acting on them at the same time. But its goal isn't to toy with people, right? Amazing. Luonan couldn't help but admire Octopus for being able to see so much from a simple molecular formula. But then he thought about it. Octopus himself probably had similar thoughts besides his eyesight and professional level. After all, he was a pharmacist and an awakened. Luonan really didn't know whether he should be anxious or proud when he saw Octopus's reaction. But he knew that if Octopus continued to stay in the room and was seen by his aunt and uncle, everything would be exposed. In fact, the two elders who had left in succession had already appeared within the range of his senses. It was too late to leave now. Disappear right now and then I'll give you the original version. Okay. Octopus's eyes lit up. He didn't say anything further as he pulled open the window and jumped down. The height of 3 stories was nothing more than a single step for him. Luonan let out a long breath. He tidied up his clothes and confirmed that there were no flaws. He pushed open the door and left. Mrs. Luo Shuqing was just about to knock on the door when she was startled by Luonan's action of opening the door. She carefully sized up Luonan's face a few times before revealing a smile and said, What do you think? Is it effective? It's all right, but there's no need to buy it specifically. Luonan began to act with his aunt. To be honest, his acting skills were terrible. Fortunately, his aunt also had something on her mind, so the conversation between the two was a little absent-minded. At this time, Octopus also started to harass him through the hexa ear, forcing him to pass on the relevant information. The more anxious Octopus became, the calmer Luonan became. Now he had to re-evaluate his grandfather's results, and make a decision. A chaotic weekend afternoon began. Actually, the afternoon passed by very quickly. After the nap, Luonan and Mo Peng played a few rounds of 10 Days in the Wilderness. Then it was time for Luo Yuandao to go out for a walk every day. The two young men accompanied him cautiously, and listened to the strange words of the old man. The uncle and aunt, standing a little apart, talked to each other in a low voice, and all seemed to be proceeding in a calm and orderly manner. The problem was that Luonan's ears never had a moment of peace. Luonan's uncle and aunt believed that they were far enough away, but there would always be some words that would fall into the range of Luonan's senses. Without exception, they were all topics related to his illness. In addition, Octopus's harassment came from another direction without end. Ever since Luonan gave Octopus the corresponding molecular formula, it was as if a bag of salt had been poured over him. Octopus's thoughts began to twitch. Astonishment, bewilderment, doubt. And all of this was completely shattered in front of the living example of Luonan. It was just as Octopus had said before. No matter how absurd the logic was, as long as it could be verified in the real world, then one must acknowledge its existence. At this time, Octopus was sitting in the laboratory trying to mix drugs while sighing and groaning at Luonan. When I see the first step, I feel that I'm an idiot. When I see the last step, I feel that I'm a madman. But when the first step and the last step are put together, I can fucking say, we're all trash. Give me another one. Just give me one more of the prerequisites you mentioned. I need to verify my train of thought. Don't give it to me yet. My logic is about to explode. My God, how could I have thought of this step? Neuronal structure mutation, growth and proliferation, retrogressive inhibition, and even withdrawal reactions. Everything is in place. Even if I had a brain hologram in front of me, I wouldn't be able to calculate it. This is the entire flow of time. This simply isn't the result a human should have. It doesn't matter if it was created or consumed. When Luonan first heard these words, he was nearly unable to suppress his excitement and pride. But slowly, these impassioned emotions melted away one by one from the weak and strange movements of his grandfather's body. What meaning did these praises have from his grandfather's perspective? Would this old man, who lived his life sealed within his logic, be able to feel a moment of joy even if he were to add all the honor and prestige he should have? Even looking at it from the most realistic of perspectives, the sanatorium had opened up all-day visitation to an old man whose condition was deteriorating. This was not good news at all. This was no different from giving up on treatment. Luonan gazed at the side of the old man's withered face. Every word and action of the old man this day flowed and permeated the bottom of Luonan's heart. An idea grew clearer and clearer from within. The sky gradually turned dark, and the all-day visitation came to an end. The family prepared to return to the city. Luonan asked Octopus about the drug through the Hexier at this time. Octopus took charge of everything. The society has a specialized express delivery channel. It is absolutely safe and convenient. Starting tomorrow, I can supply a fixed quantity. Then I'll have to thank Brother Octopus. This is nothing. Compared to the value of the two molecular formulas, this amount is a drop in the ocean. Octopus was still in a state of eagerness. Oh right. I want to write a paper based on the molecular formulas during this time. I want to publish it in an internal journal of the society. Can you represent your grandfather and give me the relevant authorization? Luonan's heart palpitated with excitement as soon as these words came out. He knew very well that he didn't have the ability to further research and explain his grandfather's theory at this stage. Then, someone who could replace him in all this and give his grandfather the reputation he deserved was one of the best choices. Octopus's level in drug compounding was outstanding. He didn't have any sinister thoughts. It was very pleasant to talk to. He was an extremely good candidate. Chapter 92. After all, Luonan had learned from Yenhong's mistakes and had considered the problem of plagiarism. But the Wilderness Explorers Society wasn't the academic world after all. This place didn't seem to have the soil for academic competition and competition. Instead, practical results were more important. Plus, the status of psychics was transcendent given the current special circumstances. As long as he stood there and displayed his usefulness, no one would be able to deprive his grandfather of his achievements. After some consideration, Luonan decided to trust Octopus. He simply replied, "Okay." Octopus immediately laughed heartily, "Excellent. I'll prepare the power of attorney. The society will use the same format and there will be 2 notaries. Each of us will choose one. Who are you going to choose? Your secretary?" Luonan finally felt completely at ease after hearing Octopus take the initiative to talk about this. He thought of He Yuan's temperament and status. She was indeed the most suitable to be a notary, and so he expressed his agreement. The family had already gotten in the car and drove out of the sanatorium. Luonan was still sitting in the front seat. He turned his head to look at the building that was gradually turning blood red under the setting sun. He was speechless for a time. A moment later, he transmitted to Octopus, "My grandfather is here." I'll leave him in your care. Octopus naturally patted his chest in guarantee. Relax. I never knew there was such a great god by my side. Now I know. From now on he is my grandfather. I will definitely take good care of him in the morning and evening. My grandfather's current state. Cough. You don't need to pay too much attention to him. Luonan was really worried that Octopus would get hot-headed and grab his grandfather like a treasure to interrogate him. I understand. It's not good to disturb the old man in his current state. Then can you hurry up and let me see the old man's notes? Octopus was in a highly excited state right now. His thoughts jumped extremely fast. Oh right. I just heard you say that a portion of the old man's notes were lost. That's easy. We can jointly issue a mission later. As long as we set the reward high, like 1 honor point for 1 notebook, do you believe that even President Ouyang will be mobilized? Don't worry about not having enough points. I can share the burden. As long as it's related to medicine, give me a complete copy and I'll pay in full. Okay. Luonan also smiled as Octopus enthusiastically described the situation. But soon he changed the topic to something else. Oh right. Bro Octopus, let me ask you again. For ability users, as long as their self-logic is complete and can be verified, it doesn't matter how crazy they are. Is that right? Of course. Look at the gods, saints, and primogenitors of those secret sections. Their abilities to manifest their divinity are too against the rules. They can't even be stopped. Octopus Bro concluded, but immediately after he felt that something was wrong and quickly added, Yes, more important than logic is verification. If you can't interfere with the real world, then you're mentally ill. If you think you can interfere with the real world, then you're severely mentally ill. F***CK, I think what I've told you this afternoon is the content of the intermediate seminar. It's beyond the syllabus. Don't let your imagination run wild. Octopus lived up to his reputation of working in a mental sanatorium. He was extremely sensitive to relevant issues. He was really worried that Luonan would let his imagination run wild and act without any scruples. At Luonan's age and with his occupation as a psychic, the possible problems that could arise were far too serious. Luonan laughed when he saw that Octopus had the intention to continue exhorting him. Relax bro Octopus. I know that the most important task for me right now is to temper my body and realize a balance between my mind and body. Then I'll use the dual channels of my mind and body to slowly experience this world and gradually form an answer. I don't need to be in a hurry to explain this world, right? Okay. Octopus didn't know that most of Luonan's words were pointers from He Yuan. He immediately let out a sigh of relief and praised loudly, Excellent. Kid, you have the perception. You should do this step by step in a down-to-earth manner. Right now, your body really is lacking in polishing. But it doesn't matter. You're still in puberty. Wait until the matter with the human-faced arachnid is over. I'll find you a set of training methods in the direction of mental strengthening. You'll definitely be able to achieve a balance before your body stops developing in a few years. When that time comes, you should be able to rely on the foundation laid down by the old man to become an awakened. Alright. I'll send you my notes from the junior seminar in a bit. You can refer to them first. There are a lot of very basic things in there. But these things will still be useful even if you become an extraordinary. Luonan took a deep breath. Thanks a lot, bro Octopus. Luonan chatted with Octopus about a few basic topics before cutting off the connection. He looked at the sky outside right now. It had already irreversibly fallen into an even deeper darkness. The street lights on both sides of the high-speed magnetic track were like two dragons of light without heads or tails. They extended and danced in the darkness. They seemed to merge together at the corner, but they separated in the blink of an eye. They were incomparably harmonious and synchronized, but they were never able to stick together. Luonan leaned against the back of the chair and stared blankly at the reflections of the two dragons of light. One is Grandpa. The other is me. What? Mrs. Luo Shuqing, who was sitting in the back seat, was extremely sensitive to Luonan's soliloquy. In fact, Luonan hadn't spoken a single word ever since he got on the car. He maintained a long period of silence. This made her raise her vigilance. Luonan turned his head and saw that his aunt was clearly very nervous, but she was doing her best to maintain a calm posture. He thought for a bit and spoke in a low voice, Aunt, give me a precise answer. Grandpa, how much longer? Luo Shuqing's face was instantly filled with astonishment. Then she used an even more obvious frown to conceal it. Her voice was deliberately suppressed to be deep. What are you letting your imagination run wild? Luo Nan took a deep breath. 2 years? I told you not to let your imagination run wild. 1 year. Luo Nan. Luo Shuqing suddenly raised her voice, causing Mo Peng's body to go rigid to the side. His uncle never turned his head. It was as if he hadn't heard a thing. He was acting as a driver for show. Luo Nan let out a long breath, stabilizing the surging emotions in his heart. He also did his best to steady his voice. Grandpa has feelings for my painting? What are you talking about? Luo Shuqing felt that Luo Nan's train of thought was very strange. Luo Nan lowered his head and opened the notebook. He flipped to the page of the prison building and showed it to his aunt. Grandpa had feelings for this painting this morning. Isn't that right, Brother Peng? Mo Peng's entire body felt uncomfortable when he heard Luo Nan take the initiative to call him brother. This was a fucking threat, but he still nodded. Of course, he had to keep his words like, it was this painting that made the old man go crazy to his stomach. Luo Shuqing took the notebook and looked at the chaotic lines that had other meanings. Her eyebrows furrowed even tighter. She closed the notebook. She didn't want to look too much so as to avoid being disturbed in her train of thought. Just say it. What do you mean in the end? I want to draw a painting. I want Grandpa to see it. I want to draw a painting that will make him truly happy. Make him happy. This isn't easy. I need time, but I just don't know how much time I have. Luo Nan turned his chair to sit face to face with Luo Shuqing. Their gazes met. I need to draw up a schedule for my plan. So I hope Aunt can give me accurate information to use as a reference. With the identity of Luo Yuandao's eldest son and grandson, is that okay? Chapter 93. Luo Nan knew that his aunt seemed strong, but she was actually a very traditional woman. She taught her children strictly and her thinking was relatively conservative. She often followed the will of the male in the family when it came to matters of principle. Luo Nan was the only seedling of the Luo family. His aunt was absolutely unable to refuse him just because of this. Luo Nan got what he wanted 2 minutes later. He didn't know what to say to his aunt at this time, so he could only turn his seat back. The car sank into silence once more. Luo Nan used the flexible e-ink screen to flip through his grandfather's diagnosis. The diagnosis did not have a clear time limit, but the truth was hidden between the lines. Luo Yuandao had multiple organ failure due to the many complications caused by the pathological changes to his nervous system. He was already in an extremely dangerous stage. In fact, he was completely relying on medicine and equipment to support himself. From the doctor's perspective, it was already a miracle that this old man could walk, talk, and lose his temper. But the strong stimulation of medicine would eventually be unable to resist the exhaustion of the essence of life. No one knew when this balance would tilt. Perhaps the old man's tolerance to a certain medicine would increase by a bit, and this balance would be broken. Then everything would be irreparable. If everything was simplified, it could be summed up in 2 words: at any time. Unexpectedly, Luo Nan wasn't that surprised. It was as if this was how things should be. The Hexayear sent another message. It was still Octopus. Octopus sent over his study notes from back in the day. The notes were all the key information he recorded when he participated in the Society's elementary research classes. There was a set of fundamental theories that tempered the mind and the fleshly body. They were very classical and practical. Octopus sent them over naturally meant to point Luo Nan in the right direction. Luo Nan skimmed 10 lines at a glance. He roughly flipped through the notes and stored them in the Hexayear's personal folder. He wasn't going to look at them in detail. His body leaned back against the back of the chair. His gaze once again looked at the parallel light dragons outside the window. Although the light dragons had the same trajectory, they would never converge. This was inevitable according to the rational rules of the normal world. It was just like how his grandfather, a schizophrenic, couldn't truly understand him when he drew a picture with the thinking of a normal person. Luo Nan spent a lot of time trying to use normal people's logic to interpret his grandfather's theories over the past 5 years. He explained it to normal people and even convinced them. But now he understood. His grandfather's logic completely broke away from the dimensions of normal people. What did the honor and justice of the world have to do with him? What his grandfather needed, or at least what Luo Nan believed he needed, was a clear, straightforward, and correct communication. That was the beginning of everything. The first was logic. Luo Yuandao's logic was classical. His formatting theory was a form similar to primitive philosophy. He advocated the nesting of self-format, social format, and heaven and earth format. This kind of nesting was not from the outside to the inside, from the material to the spirit. It was from the inside to the outside, from the self to the entire universe. Apart from the founder, few people would like this theory. Because it pushed all existences other than me into the whirlpool created by me, and turned them into my slaves. Even Luo Nan, who listened and obeyed his grandfather's every word regarding the self format, interpreted the societal format as a 5-level structure of student, employee, technician, clergyman, and politician. Intentionally or unintentionally, Luo Nan understood these 5 levels of structure as relatively objective existences. The social format was viewed as a set of undiscovered formulas, an undefined model, and the collective creation of a certain human society. This was essentially no different from most of the sociological theories on the market. In fact, it was even worse. It was just as Mo Peng, who excelled in all 7 subjects, had said. Where was the standard? Luo Nan heard a clear and insane answer to this question from his grandfather's roar. Mine. All of it is mine. My student, my employee, my technician, my clergyman, my politician. Selfish and arrogant to the point of making one nauseous. Extreme to the point of making one tremble. But Luo Nan was able to find a complete and clear thread of logic from within when he eliminated these unnecessary emotions. Luo Nan flipped through the notebook, flipping to the page on the prison building. He flipped to the page on which the wraith sign was derived. These were the 2 psychic diagrams he had left on the paper. Then he flipped back. He opened the flexible e-ink screen and entered the interface of the drawing software. There should be one more here. He had drawn the 3rd psychic diagram on the night of the 28th, which was like a muddy river. However, there was no one inside. Instead, he long pressed to open the 2nd interface of the software. It really was like a muddy river had flowed through here. Then could he understand it this way? The psychic diagram had already been added in this way? The psychic diagram was personally drawn by Luo Nan. Naturally, he knew what it symbolized. The muddy river water was the muddy flow of emotions held by the human-faced arachnid. It was formed from the convergence of the corresponding emotions of countless humans. Practically no one was able to escape from this dusky muddy water. And within this muddy flow, the human-faced arachnid carried out its hunt. Luo Nan stared at the 5-story tower structure. The sketches of human figures were densely packed inside. Admittedly, they were arranged neatly like playing cards, but they were inexplicably an eyesore. He subconsciously trembled for a bit as if he was going through a sieve. In an instant, the muddy flow of the interface became even more chaotic. It was as if an invisible giant hand was stirring. More importantly, the several hundred playing cards didn't follow the previous interface function of shuffling. Instead, they were scattered in all directions. The thousands of human figures on them were like drowning passengers on a capsized ship. They poured out from the 5-story tower structure, struggling, drifting, and twisting within the muddy flow. Luo Nan calmly looked at all of this and came to a conclusion. Everyone is struggling within the muddy flow of emotions. Simple depictions and replications are of no significance to the society's format. I believe that classifying and placing them is useless. What is truly meaningful? His gaze cast onto the 5-story tower structure of the interface's main body. It was already completely empty inside. No, there were exceptions. There were 2 people on the lowest student level. Luo Nan had quite a deep memory of one of them. It was a gift that he had drawn not even 2 days ago. A certain man was waving his arm with one hand and his other hand was wrapped around someone's shoulder. He seemed deranged, yet he seemed unafraid. It was Xie Junping in an explosive state. The other one was a fish. It looked very lively as it spiraled and swam in the muddy water. In fact, it never crossed the boundaries of the student level. Luo Nan stared at the outline of this fish that seemed to have been casually drawn. He used his finger to gesture a few more times and confirmed its origin. Within the 3rd psychic diagram, it was one of the many ability users who used the fish-style depiction. Its corresponding target was cat eyes. That was not all. Looking up from the student level, and across the empty staff level, there was a strange symbol floating in the technician level. Chapter 94. Luo Nan sat quietly. He stared at the mostly empty 5-level pyramid and continued to deduce his conclusions. The same pyramid can contain vastly different contents. This is probably because the standards are completely different. The previous stratification was just a simple reconstruction of the structure of society. Therefore, everyone could be placed within it. But this kind of structure did not have a clear and precise location for each individual. It was like a pile of spare parts. No matter how large or complete they were, they could not be assembled into a complete functional machine. It was meaningless. The current stratification standard is simple and crude. Does it belong to me? Under this simple logic, all existences unrelated to me will be cleared out. As for what counts as related, obviously, it has to be directly related to the self format. Only then will it be included in this system. The software interface continued to undergo changes as his logical thinking advanced layer by layer. The heavily chained crow was like a giant python shuttling back and forth within the 5-level pyramid structure. But no matter how it moved, it always maintained a connection with Xie Junping, cat eyes, and the wraith sign. The heavily chained crow was the symbol of, my heart's a prison. It was the materialization of the self format. Luo Nan had once used the heavily chained crow to destroy the human-faced arachnid's clone for Xie Junping. Cat eyes had once collided with Luo Nan's psychic diagram and was countered by the heavily chained crow. As for the wraith sign, it had always been under the control of the heavily chained crow. These scenes flashed through Luo Nan's mind one by one. They became footnotes for his inferences. Of course, there were differences between the three. This difference was reflected in the division of levels. Xie Junping and Cat Eyes were on the student level. According to formatting theory, they did not make any contributions to the social format. They were learners who received one-way indoctrination. Though Xie Junping had stood up for Luo Nan and Cat Eyes had released her deep memories of Luo Nan, that was a change in orientation after entering the formatting system. Luo Nan was completely unable to obtain any direct benefits from the bodies of these two people. And if major stimuli were to appear, they would likely refuse Luo Nan's indoctrination. They would walk out of the format pyramid and part ways with Luo Nan. As for the wraith sign, it was completely like Luo Nan's dog. It would bite whoever it was told to bite. Speaking of which, its loyalty was off the charts. It also possessed extremely powerful abilities. More importantly, Luo Nan was able to obtain direct benefits from its body. The benefits he obtained were even higher than the benefits he could obtain from purely relying on the training of his body. The results of devouring the human-faced arachnid's avatar had already proven this point. Therefore, the wraith sign entered the technician level. But the problem was that it didn't have any self-awareness, so it couldn't rise to the level of self-awareness. This level was already its limit. Luo Nan suddenly felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity as his thoughts reached this point. He felt as if he had seen such a clear hierarchy, gradually deepening connection and feedback pattern somewhere before. He searched through his memories, and the relevant scenes were fixed in his grandfather's ferocious roar. Luo Nan pressed his forehead. His fingertips moved and a certain word suddenly smashed into his brain. It was hard to get rid of it. Temple, God, nation, new God, old God. God? In Grandpa's crazy talk, the word God appeared very frequently and occupied a very central position. In the past, Luo Nan would not have cared. But now that his horizons had been broadened, it was hard for his thoughts to remain pure. He closed his eyes. In reality, he connected to the psychic wave network through the hex-ear and entered the interface of the professional association. Then he searched for the secret order's entry, focusing on finding information related to their organizational structure. Soon, a large amount of information poured out. It seemed that the psychic wave network of the society wasn't designed to be too powerful in terms of intelligent filtering. Luo Nan could only search and comb through the information with great difficulty. This lasted until there was a paragraph that attracted his attention. The vast majority of the founders of secret orders were unavoidably influenced by the existing culture of society. They often used ancient myths, mainstream religions, and historical legends as references when they first established the basic structure of their sections. They even used novels and games as models. They painted their sects with all sorts of fantastical colors and designed strict ranks. The specific concepts are vastly different. When examining the secret orders that have existed for over 10 years, one must admit that they have, to a large extent, a convergence that makes one raise an eyebrow has appeared, especially in terms of organizational structure. The three great world secret orders seem to coincidentally divide their internal personnel into 4 ranks. Although the names are all different, the meanings within are very similar. I have unified them as shallow believer, devout believer, fanatic believer, and favored. As the names imply, the believers of these 4 ranks have different degrees of devotion and devotion toward the God. And the gifts and rewards they receive from the God are different as well. Facts can prove that the God and the first oblatum are true to the various ranks of believers. The offerings, demands and feedback they receive from the god are real and not false. There is a strict hierarchy of judgment. They possess a similar but strict and feasible logic, forming a system that is still stable to this day. Luonen felt that this article was very much to his liking after reading halfway. It just so happened to answer his question, so he paid special attention to the author's name. He didn't expect the author to be quite familiar. Bamboo Pole? If it wasn't the same name, then this person was the skinny and tall person who was in charge of intelligence work during the operation on the night of the 28th. Luonan remembered that this person always had a cheeky smile on his face, but his words were very sharp. Luonan's impression deepened and he matched this person's description with his own situation. Now he finally understood where the sense of familiarity came from. The 4 levels of the secret order's structure. Of course, it was possible that this was a definition borrowed from a certain novel or a certain game. It seemed to be completely comparable to the format pyramid. Although the format pyramid had 5 levels, the highest level, politician, had a rather special definition. It represented the subversion and denial of the entire format. It could be ignored for the time being. The next 4 levels were quite reliable. If he looked at it this way, then his grandfather's formatting theory, or at least the level of the social format, was also a kind of ability explanation system. And it leaned towards the standpoint of the secret order? Then what was the current him? Was he some malnourished god? Luonan rubbed his forehead even harder. Tired? We're almost home. His uncle suddenly spoke. Luonan went, He jumped out of his thinking mode. It seemed that his attitude just now had made his uncle and aunt even more worried. He thought for a bit and pursed his lips in a feigned relaxed manner. I'm not tired. I'm just a bit hungry. His uncle grunted and turned to speak to his aunt. It's late to go home and cook. Should we let old Mo make a nutritious meal, or should we deal with it outside? Mo Peng cried out in fright. Heavens! Don't trouble him. Chapter 95. Old Mo was the family's AI housekeeper. Since he had carelessly chosen to lean towards environmental protection, this AI's cooking menu forever lacked high-fat and high-protein options. Moreover, the nutritious meals he made were more like medicine than food. Old Mo's uncle and aunt weren't averse to this. They didn't mind occasionally slacking off and tasting fresh food. But for Mo Peng, he would rather drink plain water. Luonan also felt that it would be best for him, who had consumed large amounts of mental power, to strengthen his nutritional supplements. Seeing the troubled expressions of the 2 youngsters, Luonan's uncle readily agreed. Then we'll settle it outside. There's a new restaurant nearby that's pretty good. As he spoke, he used the car's AI to order food online. His luck wasn't bad. Even though he had already entered the bustling Xia City district and it was mealtime, he still successfully placed the order. The SUV cut into another lane and entered the light track of a certain skyscraper. It began to gradually rise to the traffic level. Xia City had 20 transportation layers from the ground to the sky. Aside from the 5 layers that were used by specialized flying machines, the remaining 15 transportation layers mostly used the light rails that bypassed the various high-rise buildings in the city to realize the switching and distribution of the layers. Every night, the outer layers of many skyscrapers would light up like spiraling neon lights. Tens of thousands of flying cars would shuttle back and forth, forming a seemingly never-ending stream of light. It was filled with the beauty of order. Luonan continued to read the rest of Bamboo Pole's words, and the word, order, was mentioned. We've observed the secret orders. The vast majority of them, from top to bottom, show signs of irrationality. But within and between every order, a high degree of unity and order is ultimately manifested. It makes one suspect that all irrational things are stuffed into a hard, firm and tight framework. Or perhaps it's a kind of magical machine. Irrational raw materials are filled in, and the product is order. I can't find any other explanation for this besides a complete ability explanation system. We can match the secret order's ability explanation system with the society's internal ability explanation system. Shallow believers correspond to unawakened ability users. Devout believers correspond to awakened ones. Fanatics correspond to engineers. Favored correspond to extraordinaries. Basically, the ability levels are quite compatible. Is this the ability explanation system's different routes lead to the same goal? If this is the case, the society will be very happy to sit down with the secret order and eat breakfast together. But in reality, the church's explanation system still had serious differences with that of the association. The society, the church, and even the burners. What does the coexistence of two or even more systems mean? Have we only seen one side of the truth, or is the world like a sandwich? Or simply a thousand-layer cake? There's another layer to unravel, it's just a matter of how you want to eat it. Bamboo Pole's article was very long. Luonan only read the gist of it. However, the main point was still very clear. It was to discuss the opposing system between the association and the secret orders, and to correct some people's belittling of the secret orders. However, Luonan's feelings had deviated a bit from Bamboo Pole's goal of writing this article. I seem to have entered the wrong door. Luonan felt a small sense of absurdity. No matter how he looked at it now, his own formatting theory leaned more towards the direction of the secret orders. Like Xie Junping and Cat Eyes, weren't they shallow believers? Another example would be the Wraith Sign, who was a fanatic. The standard of the societal format was more like the typical structure of the secret orders, with God as the center. If the facts proved that his self-logic and the ability explanation system advocated by the society had a serious deviation, then what was the point of him joining the society? Of course, Luonan wanted to know why his grandfather's theory would form such a close correspondence with the secret orders system. Was it a coincidence? Or was it some other reason? Luonan's doubts were destined not to be answered in a short amount of time. The family had already arrived at the restaurant. They were guided by the waiter to their reserved seats and sat down. The restaurant's environment was pretty good. It had antique wooden window partitions, allowing light to pass through and emphasizing privacy. Even though there were quite a few people eating, it was relatively quiet. Luo Shuqing was quite satisfied. The place you chose is pretty good. This kind of environment was a bit old-fashioned for youngsters. Mo Peng wasn't interested in the surrounding decorations. He lowered his head and played his game after ordering. Luonan went to the bathroom. His train of thought had hit a bottleneck. It was hard not to be preoccupied. He kept his head down the entire way, ignoring the things around him. But when he was washing his hands, someone beside him called out in a probing manner, "Mr. Luo?" Luonan was startled. He raised his head and saw that the person was around 40 years old. His figure was tall and sturdy, and he looked capable and calm. Luonan just felt that the person looked familiar. He thought about how he was addressed, and only then did he remember that the only people who could call him by this name were those who participated in the operation on the 28th. Yes, this person was one of the 4 bodyguards He Yuan had brought with her that day. He was responsible for looking after Shui Lei Black Wolf and the other injured people. He was a very steady person. However, Luonan couldn't remember his name no matter how hard he tried. He couldn't help feeling a bit embarrassed. This bodyguard was experienced in the ways of the world. He smiled and extended his hand to introduce himself. "Zhou Hu. I didn't greet Mr. Luo that day. My apologies." Luonan hurriedly called out, "Brother Zhou." He was a bit baffled. "Brother Zhou is here? Is Sister He here as well?" "No. I'm off today. I'm here for a private gathering. A group of old comrades." "Alright. Cragburst is here as well." "Ha." Luonan's impression of Cragburst, who was also in the society, was much deeper. Cragburst was a valiant close combat expert. He existed as Luonan's protector during the later stages of the operation. Even though Cragburst didn't have the opportunity to truly display his strength, the 2-meter-tall giant gave Luonan a sense of security. Luonan even added Cragburst as a friend through the Hexayear. "You guys are comrades? We've tested each other before. We don't have a deep friendship, but we're familiar now." Zhou Hu laughed as he invited, "Mr. Luo, do you want to come over to our place?" "Forget it. Send my regards to Cragburst." Luonan wasn't good at this sort of social interaction. He was just about to leave when he turned his head to see Mo Peng's short and stout figure make his way in. Mo Peng was stunned for a moment when he saw Luonan chatting with a tall and sturdy man with a clear age gap. But he didn't really take it to heart. He greeted Luonan and went to release. Luonan found it inappropriate to leave first. He smiled at Zhou Hu, "My older cousin." Zhou Hu understood and took his leave first. Mo Peng came to the sink just as Luonan left. He grimaced in pain. "Did you just run into an acquaintance?" "Dad ran into one too. This place is evil." Another person walked in before Luonan could finish speaking. Luonan's back was facing the door right now. The person just happened to see Luonan's back as well as the side of his face reflected in the mirror. The person suddenly trembled and turned to leave. Chapter 96. As the voice fell, the person who had just entered hurriedly barged in again. He lowered his head and quickly entered the room. It looked like he really couldn't hold it in any longer. Mo Peng was baffled, but he also chuckled. Luo Nan could vaguely feel that this person's strange attitude was due to him. He swept a glance at the person's face and saw that this person was very young. He wore vintage gold-rimmed glasses. At first glance he looked a bit like Octopus Bro. However, his hair was combed and shiny. His skin was tender. He was a bit feminine. He looked familiar, but Luo Nan didn't recognize him for a moment. Luo Nan couldn't block this person at the urinal and interrogate him about this sort of thing. Luo Nan only kept his guard up as he walked out with Mo Peng. He casually picked up the topic from before. Where did this acquaintance come from? From work? He looks like a rich man? He brought a bodyguard and a lawyer. It looks like he's here to discuss business. He looks quite young. Mo Peng only remembered this much. The two strolled leisurely in the hallway. Then the sound of footsteps came from behind them. The young man who had gone to the wrong door just now walked in this direction after coming out of the restroom. However, he turned into a private room halfway. The distance was just right. Luo Nan released his mental senses to look at the situation inside. He sized up the faces of the people in the room when he heard a sentence. This place is evil. Whoever comes, that's who. Oh, the one we just talked about. He nearly choked Li Shueqing to death. He even joined the order club. *CKME. That psychopath. Luo Nan couldn't help but touch his face. Luo Nan's advance had already exceeded the range of his senses after hearing this sentence. However, he didn't need to listen to the following words. He finally remembered that the glasses guy was one of Xie Junping's bad friends. He seemed to be called Lu Tao. Luo Nan's initial understanding of the Darksider life form came from this person. There were 2 or 3 familiar faces among the people in the private room. He should have met them on the warship. They were probably a small circle of rich kids. Luo Nan just didn't expect that he would have a bit of fame in that circle. Even though it didn't sound good. Luo Nan no longer paid attention to this group of people. He and Mo Peng entered the hall together. The conversation within the private room continued to progress. It wouldn't be wrong to say that this was the circle of the rich second generation, but it would be more accurate to say that it was the majority of the members of the Construction Society's executive committee, except for Li Shueqing, who was still lying in the hospital. Originally, they were going to have a meal with the person in charge of the Rainbow Fund, the co-investor, but the other party still hadn't arrived. The group of people hadn't had a meal for a long time, and they were all stifled. They could only rely on bragging and gossiping to survive. The relationship between this kid and Xie Junping is unclear. I heard that the next morning, Li Shueqing called Shattered Soul and his gang to beat him up. In the end, not only did they not succeed, they were even beaten up by Xie Junping and sent to the hospital. This can't be right. Why did I hear that it's related to Lien Jiu? Have you seen Xie Junping hanging out with Lien Fu these past 2 days? It seems to have collapsed. At this moment, Lang Ding stood up from the main seat. I just contacted him. He's outside. I'll go out and welcome him. Lu Taogang started a new topic. Although he was happy with it, he couldn't help but feel a little displeased. This person sure is arrogant. At this point, we don't even know his name or his appearance. I just need to know the Rainbow Fund's official seal and procedures. Lang Ding chuckled. He called a few people out and walked towards the main hall. Luo Nan and Mo Peng had already entered the main hall at this time. They could see from afar that the table they had reserved for 4 people at this time was actually full. There was even a person standing outside a small booth. Mo Peng rolled his eyes when he saw this. You haven't finished chatting yet. Don't tell me you want to eat at the same table? Luo Nan walked a bit closer. He wasn't obstructed by the antique wooden window, so he just happened to be able to see the appearance of the person outside the booth. His feet suddenly stopped. The person standing had a swift and fierce build. His skin was dark and shiny. His gaze swept all around with ice-cold vigilance. He had the appearance of a bodyguard. The dark-skinned bodyguard clearly sensed Luo Nan's gaze at the same time that Luo Nan's gaze swept over. His cold gaze was cast over. It was the dark-skinned man that Luo Nan had seen at Gear. The burner. Luo Nan's brows furrowed slightly. His footsteps paused for a bit, then he sped up and walked straight over. He saw that aside from his aunt and uncle, there were 2 other people sitting. One was Lawyer Zhu, whom he had seen that day. The other was a man who looked to be around 30 years old. His face was handsome and he seemed to be smiling. But from the contours of his face, he should have maintained a serious appearance all year round. His smile appeared stiff, distorted, and a bit inexplicable coldness. But the thing that gave Luonan the deepest impression was the area around this person's eye sockets. The color of blood and tendons interweaved together to form a strange contrast with his current smile. Oh right, this person's eyes were a dark red color. Luonan got closer and further confirmed that the atmosphere in the booth was absolutely abnormal. His uncle's expression was tranquil. His aunt's expression was as deep as water. Neither of them said a word. There wasn't a hint of harmony between old friends. The red-eyed man didn't say a word either. Lawyer Zhu's elite tone came out from the booth. I am unable to explain too much for the time being regarding Mr. Yan's impromptu intention to transfer. However, from my professional perspective, there is a very high degree of maneuverability involved. Luo Nan and Mo Peng had already walked out of the booth at this time. The dark-faced bodyguard's gaze was fixed on Luo Nan's face from beginning to end. Luo Nan didn't do anything when faced with such a direct and cold gaze, but Mo Peng already found it a bit hard to endure. I say, there's something wrong with this atmosphere. The red-eyed man saw them return at this time and waved his hand, indicating for Lawyer Zhu to pause. His gaze turned and directly cut to Luo Nan's face. He paused for a moment and actually took the initiative to stand up, grinning. This was an even stranger smile. The center of his lips was quite wide open, but the corners of his lips were purposefully tightened, affecting the muscles of his cheeks. Not only did his eyes not narrow because of his smile, they actually widened a bit. The dark red region at the corner of his eyes slightly twitched. That bizarre distortion was indescribable. This must be Luo Nan. I remember the last time I saw you. You just came out of your mother's womb. You weren't even the size of a palm. You just rolled up and down like that. Yan Yongbua. Mrs. Luo Shuqing slammed the table with a bang. Her voice was unprecedentedly furious and shrill. The entire restaurant went silent. The customers in the surrounding area and even further away all turned their heads to look. The waiters hurried over, wanting to understand the situation. And this attracted the attention of Lang Ding and the others, who had just arrived at the hall and were looking all around. They didn't see anything else, but they first saw the dark-faced bodyguard who was like a door god. Hey, over there. A group of people walked over with curiosity. Lang Ding was the first to see the situation inside the booth. His gaze swept past Luo Nan and the others before finally stopping on the face of the red-eyed man. His expression changed in an instant and he cried out involuntarily, Teacher? Teacher Yin? Some of the members of the construction society who followed behind him were at a loss. Some were stupefied. But the ones who recognized the face before their eyes all thought to themselves, this sponsor. What a deep scheme. Chapter 97. I've been busy lately, so the update time is a bit messy. Please forgive me. No matter what, it had to be guaranteed that he would be able to eat twice a day. After this week, the rhythm would adjust. This chapter is the second update on the 17th. The vast majority of the Construction Society's executive committee members had stayed at Acumen College for over 10 years. 6 years ago, Yen Hong's academic scandal had shaken the entire world. There was no reason for them to forget it. What's more, wasn't the theme they were currently revolving around gear? In that academic scandal, the accident in Gear's underground laboratory was the scene that caused the world to be in an uproar. Yen Hong, facing the criticism of the entire world, deliberately created an accident, destroyed evidence, and used the crudest method to cover up his crimes. This also caused Acumen College, who was responsible for the administration, to lose face. After the incident, Yen Hong, who was condemned by everyone, disappeared without a trace. Yen Yongbua, who was a lecturer in the academy, also disappeared. Most people felt that they would never see them again. But reality slapped him hard in the face. It really is Yen Yongbua. He used to give me lessons. Lu Tao recognized Yen Yongbua and couldn't help but poke his companion beside him. Hey, he's the person in charge of the Rainbow Fund? That's a credit limit of tens of billions? And it seems that Quantum Corporation is behind it. Is Yen Hong coming back for revenge? His companion shook his head. He did not and could not answer this question. Yen Yonggua's demonic crimson eyes swept across the faces of Lang Ding and the others. He nodded slightly as a greeting. Then he turned his gaze to Luo Shuqing, who was glaring at him, and bowed. Ms. Luo, I'm sorry. My words were inappropriate. Actually, I have always admired and respected senior sister Qingwen. Therefore, when I returned this time, the first thing I did was to purchase gear. This was senior Qingwen's undying work back then. Back then, I also hoped to restore the glory of my father's laboratory. Luo Shuqing didn't hide her emotions at all. In your dreams? Yin Yonghua calmly tapped his temple. Now, I have the ability to turn dreams into reality. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot that you haven't eaten yet. I won't disturb you for now. We'll talk about the transfer later. He walked straight out of the cubicle and Lawyer Zhu hurriedly got up to follow. Luo Nan stared coldly at this strange man outside the compartment. He didn't know who Yin Yonghua was at first, but now he was clear. It was this person. Yin Hong's son. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to describe him as a mortal enemy. No matter which side it was, they had no intention of resolving the enmity. Yin Yonghua walked to Luo Nan's side. Just as he was about to brush shoulders with Luo Nan, Yin Yonghua suddenly turned his head. He used a twisted smile to meet Luo Nan's clear and cold eyes. Speaking of which, my father and Mr. Luo Yuandao have worked together for many years. I was also Mr. Luo Yuandao's student and research assistant for a period of time. Senior Zhongheng, Senior Qingwen, and I are fellow alumni of Acumen College. If there is a chance to coexist, I hope to continue the fate of our two families at Gear. Luo Nan was disinclined to respond to such meaningless words. But in the next moment, Yin Yonghua suddenly turned around without any warning. He raised his hand and embraced Luo Nan's shoulder. It looked intimate, but Yin Yonghua bent his waist slightly. His unyielding strength forced Luo Nan to bend over. His mouth was right next to Luo Nan's ear as he laughed in a low voice. I was exaggerating a bit just now. You weren't that small when you were wrapped up in the womb. At worst, you were like a chihuahua rolling around in the solution. You were actually quite cute. Yin Yonghua felt Luo Nan's body go rigid in an instant. He patted Luo Nan's shoulder. It's just a pity for Senior Qingwen. I've been fantasizing about her since junior high. But from then on, I never did it again. Do you know why? Luo Nan turned his face slightly. His gaze was penetratingly cold and hard, but it was unable to affect Yin Yonghua's twisted smiling face in the slightest. It's too easy for me to make associations. When her face flashes in my mind, I think of that pile of rotting flesh and bones. In this instant, a certain string in Luo Nan's mind snapped. The heavily chained crow was about to pierce out of his body amidst the rattling vibrations, piercing through the head of the man before him. But a scorching firepower was transmitted from Yin Yonghua's body in advance. It penetrated through Luo Nan's neck, just like a red-hot blade. The instant brush with death caused Luo Nan's thoughts to stagnate. The heavily chained crow didn't come out, but Yin Yonghua's words pressed into his eardrums one word at a time. Look. This is the archetype format. This is the burner. This is the true result. And your kind is worthless. I didn't have the time to say those words to your dead old man back then. I'll give them to you. Yin Yonghua let go of Luo Nan's shoulder and laughed loudly just like that. He directly left and the dark-faced bodyguard followed closely behind. Lawyer Zhu also hurriedly followed. Lang Ding and the other members of the construction society looked at each other in dismay. They hesitated for a while, but they still chased after Yin Yonghua. Yin Yonghua seemed to have gone mad. He laughed all the time. His laughter was hoarse and sharp, echoing throughout the entire dining hall. Nan Nan. Luo Shuqing, who had just been intimidated by the inexplicable power, finally broke free. She flipped over the chair and threw herself over. She hugged Luo Nan, who was still in a bent posture, and spoke incoherently. Are you okay? What did he say? That bastard. Are you okay? What did he say? Luo Nan didn't say anything. Up ahead, Yin Yonghua walked very quickly, pulling open the distance between him and the group of people from the construction society. Finally, his laughter stopped, and his face quickly returned to its usual cold and solemn state. Lawyer Zhu. Lawyer Zhu had to jog the entire way in order to keep up. It was inevitable that his elite style of calmness was a bit scattered. But he had no choice but to run. He had been scared stiff by Yin Yonghua's previous performance. He had never thought that this big financial backer of his, who had always maintained a calm appearance, would actually have such a crazed core. He gasped for breath and asked, Mr. Yen, do you have any instructions? How is the school? The sudden change in topic and situation caused Lawyer Zhu to stare blankly. Luckily, this was his field of expertise, so he quickly replied, they basically agree to speed up the process. If the bidding goes smoothly, why doesn't it go smoothly? Under the unreserved support of the Rainbow Fund. Come Lawyer Zhu. Tell me where it doesn't go smoothly? Lawyer Zhu felt his legs go a bit soft. He unconsciously swallowed a mouthful of saliva and rushed to remedy the situation. After the bidding succeeds, the relevant procedures will be completed within half a month. Are there any other obstructions? Right now he's mainly in the society. That one just now. I'm talking about Luonan. Lawyer Zhu glanced at Yin Yongguo's face from the corner of his eyes as he spoke. Seeing that Yin Yongguo didn't have any special reaction, Lawyer Zhu continued to speak. Luonan is a member of the society. He doesn't have the right to make decisions, but he does have the right to request for reconsideration. In other words, he can go through questioning a certain part of the procedure to drag things out for a period of time. Of course, this doesn't affect the overall situation. We can advance forward together. Yin Yongguo suddenly turned around and grabbed his collar in a rude manner. He stared at him and said, "Lawyer Zhu, do you know what the big picture is?" Lawyer Zhu was scared silly and shook his head vigorously. "Do you know how many earthquakes have occurred in Xia City over the past 10 days? He continued to shake his head. "It's been 15 times. If you don't even know this, how can you talk about the big picture?" Lawyer Zhu had already been thoroughly confused by Yin Yongguo's logic. Fortunately, Yin Yongguo released his grip and sighed. "Sorry, I'm a little excited. Help me think, what should I do now? Right now, my mind is filled with kill, kill, kill. Isn't this not too good?" Chapter 98. I came back too late today. The second chapter will be finished in the wee hours of the morning. I might as well put it on tomorrow morning. Everyone doesn't have to stay up to wait. It's equivalent to tomorrow's third chapter. Also, there was an error in the chapter numbering. It has been corrected. Because of their pause, Lang Ding and the others also caught up. Yin Yongguo didn't pay them any attention, only using a very serious expression to stare at Lawyer Zhu, hoping to get an answer. Lawyer Zhu's legs were really weak. His heart was already bursting with regret and fear. Now, he was more certain than ever that Yin Yongguo wasn't a normal person from the very core. Yin Yongguo wasn't normal, but Lawyer Zhu believed himself to be very normal. How could he possibly speak of this kind of kill, kill, kill matter in front of others? He just wanted to block Yin Yongguo's mouth and stop him from spitting out those murderous words. For this, he desperately squeezed his brain tissue and tried hard to form words. "Mr. Yin, perhaps we can use another method. If we want to circumvent his right to review, the best way is to terminate his membership in the club. Yes, I know this is impossible, but there is an alternative. Yes, there is another way." Under pressure, people's potential was indeed limitless. Lawyer Zhu's brain really did jump out with a brand new train of thought. Yes, we can make him withdraw. We just need to prove that Luonan has some kind of direct interest relationship with this auction. Then we just need to hold a hearing and I can shut him up forever. At this time, Lang Ding and the others had already formed a circle, blocking most of the corridor. He wanted to greet him, but Yin Yongguo didn't even bother to look him in the eye. Instead, he was quite interested in Lawyer Zhu's words. Benefits? For example, we can question whether or not Luonan had a secret agreement with the Mystic Arts Research Society beforehand. After all, the timing of his entry into the society is too coincidental. We can completely make an issue out of this. Yin Yongguo nodded slightly. Very good, but how do we prove it? No, Mr. Yin, I'm just making an analogy. Lawyer Zhu finally regained his confidence in his professional field. His voice became a bit louder. We can completely adopt a more proactive method. In fact, I think that the transfer intention that you mentioned just now is a very good entry point. I don't really understand the situation inside. It seems to be related to some patents? Yin Yongguo's expression did not change. He nodded slightly. More or less. Luonan is the direct descendant of the victim? The legal heir? That's right, that's his grandfather. Then, if you don't mind, you can use your private identity to fight a lawsuit with them. As long as the court accepts it, a beneficial relationship will appear between you and Luonan. And as the person in charge of the Rainbow Fund, you are a key figure in this bidding. Then all of Luonan's questioning of Gear's bidding process can be viewed as selfish actions. I think that with this reason, the school will make a very sensible decision. No matter how much he objects, it will be useless. Hearing this, Yin Yongguo stroked his chin lightly. Is that so? Filled with anger, yet powerless to do anything. This is good. Does this count as a pass? Lawyer Zhu secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Lang Ding and the others finally got the chance to say hello. They were actually very embarrassed. He inexplicably listened to a string of schemes aimed at Luonan, but the other side really didn't try to avoid it at all. After all, this was a public place. Many people in the restaurant were looking over because of the previous incident. There were also people going in and out of the private rooms along the corridor, casting curious glances at them. Not too far away there was a big guy who was nearly 2 meters tall. His face was flushed from being drunk. He leaned against the wall and looked over in a daze. He probably guessed that with his size he would bump into him if he walked over? But Yen Yongbor really didn't care. He was very calm right now. I'm very sorry for what happened just now. It involved some personal grudges. I lost my composure a bit and made everyone laugh. Right now, not even a hint of craziness could be seen from Yen Yongbo's body. But the more he was like this, the more people felt that he was strange and unfathomable. In the end, it was Lang Ding who suggested, "Let's go inside and talk. We need to drink a few cups in a bit to welcome Teacher Yen." No matter what they thought in their hearts, everyone nodded in agreement. The group of people immediately surrounded Yen Yongbo and entered the private room. The atmosphere seemed to be quite enthusiastic. In comparison, Luonan's family, who were still in the lobby, were in a more difficult time. This was because of what had happened before and Luo Shuqing's nearly uncontrollable emotions. Many people raised their eyebrows. The lobby manager also came over to ask if they needed any help. He probably felt that Luonan's family was in a weak position in the conflict just now. Luo Shuqing was just about to call the police, but her husband stopped her. She suppressed her uncontrollable emotions with great difficulty. Luo Shuqing felt that she shouldn't say anything right now. She should immediately go home? No, she should go to the hospital. Luonan's current state was far too worrying. His head was lowered from beginning to end, not saying a single word. Based on Luo Shuqing's understanding of children, she felt that Luonan's entire being was in an extremely gloomy state. His emotions were suppressed, and it seemed that he would explode at any moment. What she was most worried about was, would this sort of stimulation affect Luonan's mind? Right when Luo Shuqing was fidgeting restlessly, Luonan opened his mouth and said, "I'm hungry." Then he picked up his chopsticks and began to eat the food that had been placed on the dining table. This wasn't a very polite action, but it more or less displayed a rational attitude. Luo Shuqing and Mo Haihang glanced at each other. They didn't have any intentions of defying Luonan. They ate silently as well. No one was able to taste the food. Even the most ignorant Mo Peng didn't have the mood to play games. He looked at this and looked at that, his fat face wrinkling. The dinner ended hastily and the family took a car home. Luo Shuqing's emotions, which she had been suppressing in public, completely erupted in the car within the privacy of her own home. Despicable and shameless mad dogs. They've been restrained in Quantum Corporation for 5 years, and this father and son are biting anyone they see. This was the first time in Mo Peng's life that he had seen his mother use profanity. He was truly stupefied as he watched. Luo Shuqing wanted to say more, but Mo Haihang spoke in a low voice, "He's asleep." Luo Shuqing was slightly stunned. She leaned forward slightly and looked at the front passenger seat. Luonan was leaning against the back of the seat, sleeping. She suppressed all the words she had in her stomach. Luonan's reaction was abnormal no matter how she looked at it. The husband and wife looked at each other once more. They could see the worry in each other's eyes. Luonan could only apologize to his aunt and uncle for their worry. He actually hadn't slept. He just wanted to be quiet for a moment and organize his thoughts. But right now the emotions in his heart were churning. How could he calm down? He had been disturbed time and time again, so he could only shift his consciousness elsewhere. The second-level interface of the drawing software opened up on his retina through the external neuron. The interface here clearly had a subtle corresponding relationship with his mental plane. The turbid river water surged with waves, forming a whirlpool of its own. It was as if the whirlpool was a clear indication of his fluctuating emotions. Thousands of playing cards floated along with the whirlpool, forming a chaotic mess. Only the 3 believers in the format pyramid remained relatively stable. Luonan's gaze cut past Ye Junping and Cat Eyes. It didn't stop there. In the end, it fell upon the wraith sign on the technician level. Chapter 99. The red light signified that the wraith sign was devouring. In reality, it was devouring Luonan's restless and violent fury. The wraith sign was born from devouring the negative emotions of the human heart. It was restricted by the heavily chained crow here, so it was impossible for it to harm Luonan's vital energy. But when such intense emotions squeezed in, it was tantamount to releasing a layer of restriction. As the red light gradually flourished, the wraith sign sprayed out thousands of lines. It was similar to Luo Nan's sketches, but it was 10 times faster. In an instant, a complex and malevolent structure was constructed. 6 eyes lined up, each with a different color. 8 claws extended to the side, merging with the human body. Such a demonic and ugly image was the human-faced arachnid. When this image was completed, Luo Nan's restlessness on the mental plane had already reached the point where it was ready to gush out. Within the format pyramid, the human-faced arachnid prepared to pounce, and Luo Nan's mind leaped. In an instant the world changed. Luo Nan's consciousness suddenly separated from the car. His mental senses broke free from the shackles and expanded to the limit in all directions. Luo Nan's soul left his body at this moment. The SUV carrying his main body drove off into the distance. Only his soul remained here, occupying an empty plane. Luo Nan didn't feel lonely at all. This was because the range of his mental senses instantly increased explosively by 100 times, 1,000 times. The splendidly lit metropolis, the crisscrossing and speeding stream of cars, the entangled and restless living beings, an inconceivable scene was formed in this moment, smashing into Luo Nan's mind. Roar! Luo Nan cast off all his worries, restraints, and burdens. He ignored the inherent logic of the bustling metropolis and the multitude of living beings. He only responded to the most direct and violent emotions in his heart. He faced the sky and roared. The heavily chained crow rattled and trembled on his soul body, swimming endlessly. And at the front of the chain, the malevolent and ugly human-faced arachnid felt Luo Nan's violent emotions. It faced the sky and roared in response. The two forces interweaved together, forming a surging psychic wave that rapidly spread in all directions. The majestic metropolis seemed to be slightly stifled at this moment. Then it returned to its established routine as if it wasn't affected at all. On the contrary, the hundreds of crows that had already entered their nests flew up in fright. They attracted the attention of the nearby residents and passers-by, bringing a bit of restless emotions. This kind of intelligent bird seemed to have a spiritual sense that was difficult for ordinary people to reach. It felt the impact of the restlessness in the air and found it difficult to stay in its nest. Luo Nan calmed down after venting out his soul howl. At the very least he could still think logically. In the soul state, without the stimulation of various hormones, the influence of emotions was reduced. He could ignore Yin Yongguo's deep malice, and he could grit his teeth and forget the mockery and humiliation that pierced his bottom line. He could only grab the last bit of valuable information from the turbid currents that blocked his rationality. He saw me as a fetus. When the wilderness laboratory was in turmoil, he was there and he was still on our side. But at that time, it was only 2 years after Yen Hong's report and shameless plagiarism. The continuous stripping of veins brought Luo Nan a bit closer to the truth of the past. Luo Yuandao's research in the wilderness could be divided into 3 stages. After the Third World War until the mid-60s, he traveled all over the world without a fixed residence. Then came the most stable scientific research period, which lasted until the end of the 1970s. In the past 15 years, it was also the most fruitful period. Starting from the year 79, his grandfather had mental problems, and the laboratory was in turmoil. Bo Qingwen died and the entire research work came to a halt. The entire family returned to the city. Based on Yin Yongguo's approximate age, it was very likely that he joined at the end of the scientific research period or before the period of turmoil. This was a very delicate point. He should have been preparing back then. Then Yin Yongguo must be someone in the know. Perhaps he was a participant. He must be. Yen Hong's whereabouts were unknown, but his son had come out. Could his father be far away? Luo Nan's soul was submerged in the lights of the city, but there was an indescribable throbbing emotion in his heart that gradually became clear. So I still have a chance for revenge? The aerial struggle for honor was destined to be a dull and tedious path. But Luo Nan had no other choice before tonight. But now the situation was different. Luo Nan suddenly laughed in spite of himself. This was a pure joy of the mind, but it also had a subtle connection with his main body. Though his main body had gone far away with the SUV, and the distance was already over 10 kilometers, there was always a thread of spiritual response that remained. As long as this response continued, he would not reach his limits. He would even be able to realize some small interactions. This information did not come out of thin air. Luo Nan looked at the human-faced arachnid that was controlled by the chains. This vicious and ugly Darksider life form maintained its usual obedience, but there was an unending stream of energy that carried some information that was transmitted over. This information was combined with Luo Nan's own experiences, allowing Luo Nan to come to a new conclusion. Luo Nan gradually understood in his mind that it was originally impossible for him to achieve the out-of-body state at his current level. Forcefully doing it would probably result in his soul flying away and scattering. He was only able to maintain it due to the assistance of the human-faced arachnid and the blood transfusion. But in the end, it was the heavily chained crow of the self format that subdued this Darksider life form. Only then was he able to realize this marvelous arrangement. This form was just like in the legends. They used the power of evil to summon and enslave demons and ghosts. This caused Luo Nan to have an epiphany in his mind. The self-format manifested itself as control. It was very stupid to use one's own strength to fight. The most correct choice was to unearth the abilities and power of the human-faced arachnid, a summoned creature. Unfortunately, he only had one summoned creature right now. It was the human-faced arachnid avatar formed from the Wraith sign. Its abilities were powerful, but it was hard to display it in the open. But right now he could only make do with it. Luo Nan's mind stabilized. His soul body floated down onto the back of the human-faced arachnid. The lich beneath him leaped up noiselessly. It locked onto a direction and directly leaped into the void. A distance of over 100 meters was traversed in a single flash. This was much more powerful than when he was on the warship. Luo Nan's mind was a bit at ease. He was just about to use his heart to experience this feeling. But his heart stirred slightly. Then he saw a black shadow flapping its wings. It swept past at a low altitude and let out a coarse caw from its mouth. It was a crow. It had a very large head. And when it reached a certain position behind him, it no longer moved forward. Instead, it flew in circles, feeling a bit lost. Ink? Luo Nan's mental senses covered over and he finally confirmed. Wasn't this the pet crow he used to practice hypnosis? Luo Nan carefully sized up the surrounding area. Sure enough, it was a bit familiar. It turned out that their family had passed through the River Wu district on their way back to the city. And this place wasn't too far from Blue Bay Community. Chapter 100. It was said that the intelligence of crows surpassed that of a 7-year-old child. He didn't know if it was because of Ink's innate talent or the effect of hypnosis. But Ink's intelligence was clearly higher than others of its kind, and its intuition was also better. It circled a few times, but it was unable to see the silhouette of Luo Nan. It folded its wings and landed on a protruding area of the outer wall of a skyscraper. It looked all around and it scratched and hissed. It was clearly using its usual method to arouse Luo Nan's attention. Right now, Luo Nan's soul body was no more than 700 meters away. His heart stirred slightly when he saw Ink act like this. The heavily chained crow clattered as psychic waves converged and shot toward Ink. This was originally just Luo Nan's attempt, but Ink clearly quivered in his senses. The feathers on its body stood up, and it immediately turned its head. It was impossible to see anything in the dark night, but after a moment of hesitation, it still flapped its wings and flew toward the location of Luo Nan's soul body. It began to fly and glide around after arriving in this area. It seemed as if it could really sense Luo Nan's existence. Good boy. Luo Nan felt a bit gratified. He tried using this brand new method to communicate with Ink. The results were indeed much better than simple hypnosis. The feedback he received from Ink was even more direct and clear. There was a great feeling of telepathy. The human-faced arachnid's 6 heterochromatic eyes adjusted their angles. It seemed to be paying attention to this new comrade. Of course, the human-faced arachnid's avatar didn't possess any self-awareness. This was just a two-way connection that originated from Luo Nan. Luo Nan felt that he was like a wizard of the ancient era. The heavily chained crow was his artifact. It was like a giant python coiled around his soul body. The human-faced arachnid was a demon that he summoned. The crow was a spirit bird that he tamed. His power was displayed through this method. Time was of the essence. Luo Nan could not waste too much time because of Ink. Right when he was about to have Ink return, a subtle stimulus was transmitted back to him from his main body. Luo Nan was stupefied for a moment, but he soon discerned that the stimulus came from the hexa-ear. This miniature instrument manifested an inconceivable effect. After it detected that Luo Nan's main body was lacking in consciousness, it actually captured the subtle sensation of his out-of-body soul. It transformed the information into an even purer psychic wave. Through the sensing frequency, it traversed several dozen kilometers and accurately entered Luo Nan's mental plane. The message was a conversation request, and it was accompanied by a notification from the psychic wave network. Do you want to turn on the remote sensing function? If he refused to activate it, the conversation would automatically be skipped. It was equivalent to the owner being in a deep sleep state. What an incredible invention. Luo Nan couldn't help but pay his respects to the legendary President Ouyang. Without a doubt, the inventor must have fully considered the situation of the out-of-body experience to design such a function. Just from this point of view, what Octopus had described in the afternoon regarding President Ouyang's superb attainments in the field of mental enhancement was very reasonable. Luo Nan pondered for a moment, then chose to open the call. This was because he saw that the one who requested the call was actually Cragburst. Cragburst and Luo Nan were both members of the Wilderness Explorers Society. Cragburst had been at the same restaurant as Luo Nan, but the two had never met face to face. Luo Nan reckoned that Cragburst probably wanted to pull him together for a get-together or something like that. Luo Nan didn't have such thoughts right now, but he wanted to confirm the situation over at the restaurant with Cragburst. As the remote sensing function was activated, the information from both sides collided in the night sky through the guidance of psychic waves. Luo Nan, who was in his soul-body state, was inexplicably a bit absent-minded. This was a completely different experience compared to his normal state of communication. Cragburst's thick voice rang out in the instant Luo Nan's mind wandered. It looked like he was someone who habitually used the hexaear as a phone. "Mr. Luo, you left?" Luo Nan was baffled as to why Cragburst was so sure. Could it be that Cragburst ran to the hall to find him? He paused for a moment before replying with a lie that wasn't a lie. "Yeah, I'm with my family." Cragburst let out a laugh. "You really left just like that? You're so boring. You're not even going to get your face back? It's a shame that I drank less alcohol to come find you." Luo Nan was speechless for a time. Sure enough, good things don't go out but bad things travel 1,000 miles. If things continued at this pace, his embarrassing appearance in the restaurant would soon spread throughout the society. Cragburst was a wonderful person. His thinking was very straightforward. He probably felt that Luo Nan had lost face and wanted to get it back. It looked like he was very happy to participate. Unfortunately, Luo Nan's current state made it hard for him to directly borrow Cragburst's strength. Wait a minute. Luo Nan stared at Ink, who was leisurely circling in the air. A thought suddenly appeared in his mind. Is your party over? I'm not drinking anymore. Of course we're disbanding. What do you want? Cragburst clearly wanted the world to be in chaos. In the past, Luo Nan would have had a headache dealing with this sort of person. But right now this was exactly what he wanted. I still need some time before I can get there. Have they left yet? It seems they're progressing quite quickly. If you're a bit late, then you won't have any hope. Holy crap. They're out. Even a working meal isn't this fast. Did the negotiations between the Rainbow Fund and the Construction Society go smoothly, or did they part on bad terms? Luo Nan was disinclined to think about it. He looked at Ink once more and spoke to Cragburst. Help me keep an eye on them. Share your location and keep in contact. I'll hurry over and meet up with you. Stalking them, right? That's not a problem. But are you sure you can make it over in time? You don't need me to help you intercept them or something? Not for now. Okay then. Let me know if you need me. My Tiger Burst hasn't made a profit since I bought it. Thanks a lot. Luo Nan didn't say anything more to this big guy who insisted on joining in on the fun. He hung up and gazed at Ink in the sky once more. Ink seemed to feel Luo Nan's gaze as it let out two rough squawks. Its plume feathers trembled and it glided more and more cheerfully within the multicolored haze of light. The heavily chained crow's swimming speed above Luo Nan's soul body increased. The human-faced arachnid beneath Luo Nan also felt this change. It raised its bewitching and ugly head and its 6 eyes flickered. It let out a hiss that only existed on the mental plane. Xia City didn't have a true night. All sorts of neon lights built a mottled sky that belonged exclusively to this moment. It was mixed with the rhythm of a carnival that existed everywhere. It seeped into the hearts of every single person who was still wandering outside. Cragburst opened the car window and let the manic heavy metal music spray wantonly. It was accompanied by surging musical phrases as he roared loudly. He completely ignored the gazes cast by the stream of cars outside. Smash your chest open and embrace the gentleness of blood. Oh, Probably no one would think that this fellow was doing stalking work. Cragburst didn't have this sort of self-awareness. From his perspective, as long as he ensured that the target car in front of him didn't leave his field of vision, then everything would be fine. Tear my throat apart. 'Cause, holy crap. A crow that could be described as brave and fierce flitted across the hood of his car. It scraped the front window and leaped over the roof of his car. It was admittedly thrilling and exciting, but it completely disrupted the rhythm of his music. For this reason, he extended his hand out the window and pointed his middle finger to the sky. Hurry up and smash your head to death. Experience my wrath. Oh. At this time, the Hexier transmitted a message. It was Luonan, keep up the speed. I'm coming. Chapter 101. Cragburst stared blankly as a sturdy crow charged in from outside the car window. The crow bumped into the thick leather of the seat, then fell down and landed on the back seat. The two feathers that had fallen were blown out of the window by the strong wind that was blowing in and out of the carriage. But in the end, this uninvited guest stayed. Mr. Luo? Yes, it's me. The crow straightened its body and cawed twice. The sound was coarse and unpleasant to the ears, but it surprisingly matched the heavy metal roaring in the car. Of course, the real way to respond was through the Hexier. Cragburst never would have thought that the so-called, I'm coming, would be this kind of situation. For a moment, he forgot that the crow's sharp claws had already scratched the surface of the genuine leather seat. He widened his eyes and looked up and down several times. Spiritually enhanced people have so many tricks up their sleeves. What is this, a summoner? You share senses with this bird? Yes, that's about it. Since Cragburst had spoken like this, Luonan took advantage of the situation to admit it. This was to avoid looking for other reasons that would make his story full of flaws. Yo, looks like a lot of people have underestimated you. To be able to attach oneself to a flexible object and share one's senses is a brilliant move of the soul sense division. Without the corresponding talent, even an awakened would find it hard to do it beautifully. It's just too wretched. Cragburst curled his lips. He was a muscle-oriented person, so he wasn't too fond of cloning and incarnation techniques. However, the other party hadn't awakened yet, and he was a toothpick guy who was seriously biased towards other subjects. It was already quite good that he could use such a method. In particular, his attitude of seeking revenge for the smallest grievance, and never letting a grudge rest overnight, was even more praiseworthy. At this moment, Ink jumped twice on the leather seat and spread its wings to fly again. The Tiger Burst was a military-modified off-road vehicle. The interior of the vehicle was extremely spacious. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been able to fit a big fellow like Cragburst. However, it was still a little difficult for Ink, which had a body length of nearly 70 centimeters and a wingspan of nearly 1 meter, to flap its wings. After flapping twice, it couldn't exert any strength. Cragburst laughed out loud as he watched. He directly extended his hand, grabbed Ink and placed it on the control panel. Here the view is the best. Did you see that? There are two cars in front, the blue MPV. Ink's sharp toes gripped the edge of the dashboard, and it stood very steadily. Its black eyes stared at the target car in front of it with great concentration. What do you think? Do you want to do it? Cragburst had always wanted to play big. No, I don't need it for now. Luonan responded simply. Cragburst was a bit disappointed. It wasn't a good time to roar his songs right now. On the contrary, he was bored, so he casually chatted, I originally thought you were going to ask Vice Chairman He for help. You even wanted to pull Jianghu along when you left. You actually didn't contact him? Why Sister He? Luonan was a bit speechless. Could it be that he gave people the feeling that he was the type to go find his parents after getting beaten up? Well, He Yuan wasn't his parent either. On the contrary, this woman who came from the military had a typical business-like personality. Using her own personal matters to ask for help would only make people look down on her. This is my personal matter, I shouldn't let others handle it. Brother Cragburst, many thanks for helping to keep watch for so long. Leave the rest to me. What? You're going to kick me just like that? Cragburst wasn't happy. It looks like you're not going to make a move tonight? Yeah. It involves a complicated case from over 10 years ago. I want to understand it in depth. It's mainly to investigate. Cragburst still didn't give up. Are you sure? You're a bird and it took a lot of effort to fly over here. Can you keep up? The flying speed of a bald crow was considered normal among birds. Even though Ink had been nurtured by Luonan and its body had grown, its speed was only around 70 kilometers per hour. It really wasn't possible to keep up with ink in a situation where the traffic was smooth and there wasn't any congestion. The problem was that Luonan never expected ink to be able to do it. He had ink come over and appear in front of Cragburst just to find a reason to cover up. True reconnaissance still needed to rely on something else. Luonan's soul body was floating in the air above the traffic layer while he was chatting with Cragburst. He avoided close contact with an awakened like Cragburst and advanced in sync with the flow of traffic. The range of his senses exceeded 500 meters. The target's blue van was already covered within. 2 rounds of penetrating scanning had already been carried out. However, this low-key blue van's outer shell material seemed to be quite extraordinary. A certain amount of interference would appear every time the vehicle was scanned. It made it very hard to determine the number of people inside and the location. Luonan's heart grew vigilant after 2 unsuccessful attempts. Everything went quite smoothly before, but it seemed that his reconnaissance was a bit too direct. And at this moment the alarm device within the van was triggered. There was no sound but a glaring red light shone. The dark-skinned bodyguard in the driver's seat had a penetrating gaze. His gaze swept outside the window. Dark side of life form? Yin Yonghua, who had been resting with his eyes closed, slowly opened his eyes. But the alarm light suddenly extinguished at this time. Yin Yonghua couldn't help muttering, "Could it be that we've passed through the domain of a human-faced arachnid? Or is there an out-of-body mental traversing expert paying attention to us? We've been tailed." The dark-skinned bodyguard suddenly spoke. The projector turned on at this time, displaying a real-time satellite image of the surrounding area. The car's AI combined this image with the automatic recording content of the van. It quickly analyzed and marked out a few suspicious targets. The targets with the highest probability were circled in an eye-catching red frame. It was an eye-catching and domineering military-modified Tiger Burst SUV. Its volume was like that of a small armored vehicle. It had a rough 4-wheeled structure that could truly gallop through the wilderness. It seemed out of place in the bustling metropolis. This car has been following us ever since we left the restaurant. And the monitoring system shows that the words blue van were mentioned. The military? This sort of arrogant tailing method really did seem like the method of some arrogant soldier or valiant general. However, when Yin Yonghua squinted his eyes to look carefully, he was able to capture a sturdy crow beneath the car's window through the high-resolution image. Clearly, this wasn't some sort of decoration. Interesting. Investigate the details. Oh, hold on. We're in the Riverwu district right now? Yes. Then let's use a different method. Yin Yonghua slowly rubbed his fingers. Then he pulled outwards lightly. Inexplicably, a fine soft needle was pulled out from the skin and flesh of his fingertip. The scene was bizarre beyond compare. The soft needle was as thick as a strand of hair. It was only around 5 centimeters long. One could see that it was made of metal. But in Yin Yonghua's hands, it looked like it was made of flour. He rubbed the soft needle twice in his hand. When he opened his hand again, the soft needle magically transformed into a metal beetle the size of a grain of rice. Yin Yonghua opened the window and flicked the beetle out of the car with a flick of his finger. Tell Jack that it's time to upgrade the hardware. If he wants to obtain the top-notch configuration, then he needs to work harder. Look in the junk of that car. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.